it's gonna compress it.
It had been going
you know.
for a year, and this was the first time he had done
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
I call this evening's City of Lake Elmo City Council meeting to order here on Tuesday, July 21st at 7 PM. Please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So the first item of business is approval of this evening's agenda. I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve the agenda as written.
Support.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as written. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. This evening, we have a presentation for the Annual Youth Service Bureau by Mr. Mike Huntley.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and residents of Lake Elmo. Thank you again for inviting me to speak about Youth Service Bureau and sharing some information. We appreciate your support. In fact, that support is really necessary for our organization to keep functioning and doing what we do. My name's Michael Huntley. I'm the Executive Director of Youth Service Bureau. I've been with the organization since 1989. And I'm still here because I love and believe in what we do. For some of you, you might already be familiar with YSB. For others, this might be new information. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization that has been operating since 1977. And we have 3 offices, one in Stillwater, one in Woodbury, and one in Cottage Grove. And our whole mission, our whole purpose is to provide early intervention and prevention services for youth and their families. And we're the only organization in our area that provides that specific type of service. And these services include diversion, family counseling, school-based chemical health supports, youth and family education, and a military family support program that is now undergoing some expansion, and soon we'll launch it, and it will be known as the First Responder Family Support Program. And with that, and in our history, we have good, solid partnerships in the community with schools and with local law enforcement. The financial support that we receive helps our nonprofit keep our fees very, very affordable for families. And we have a generous sliding fee scale that's available for families who need that. That's our goal, to reduce barriers and be accessible. We also provide interpreter services to families that know out-of-pocket costs to that family. In 2025, our organization served 763 unique youth and their families, and we delivered just over 4,300 hours of direct service to those youth. That number does not include public speaking engagements, where we presented to over 2,500 participants last year. Here in your city of Lake Elmo in 2025, we know that we served at least 57 youth who reside in the community, and we delivered 251 hours of direct service to those youth and their families. So far in the first half of 2026, we've already served 13 youth who live here in Lake Elmo and have delivered at least 101 hours of direct service. We continue to produce what I think are really impressive results, and The quality of our services is solid, and I'd like to share real briefly some of our numbers and statistics that measure our impact. We receive a report card from Washington County. I call it a report card. It's the non-recidivism rate of all the youth who went through our diversion services and for at least 12 months had no re-involvement with law enforcement. And that number continues to be 94%, which is very solid. We also have statistics where we check in with parents in our counseling services and ask them about 6 months after they started services with us, has the situation been resolved or made manageable? And we consider those two as measures of success. 72% of the parents say yes. We don't count the families who say, well, we're stabilized. We are looking for improvement and gains and not just holding things the way they were when they came in the door. And with our school-based services, we know that 90% of the youth, through a variety of surveys, indicate that they are now using more healthy coping skills instead of substances to cope with stress and other pressures in their life. So we are again asking for $5,775 in 2027 in support of the services we provide in your area. That's the same amount we requested last year for this year, 2026. And even though our cost of operational budgeting has increased, we're keeping that number as stable as we can for you. And we also submitted a purchase of services contract that you have for review. If I can take just one more minute, I'd like to put in a little commercial. Next year is our 50th anniversary of operations, and we're gonna have a big gala event in downtown Stillwater. That'll be happening on Thursday, April 15th, 2027. Keep your eyes open for more information coming on that, but we'd love to see representatives from Lake Elmo helping attend that. It'll be a big event celebrating our 50 years. We also have a website. If anyone's interested in looking us up and finding more information, it's real easy to find. It's YSB, which stands for Youth Service Bureau, YSB.net. Are there any questions that I could respond to this evening?
Any questions from council? Seeing none, thank you very much for your
Okay.
presentation and what you're doing for the youth, families of the community.
Thank you. We appreciate your support.
Did we have any public comments or inquiries that were, anybody?
No, we
turning
do
in?
not.
Okay. All right, moving on to item E in the agenda is approval of the minutes. I'll entertain a motion for approval of the minutes from the July 7th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of July 7th meeting. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those minutes are now approved. On the consent agenda this evening, we have approved payments and disbursements, approved 2027 service contract with Youth Service Bureau, approved Inwood Neighborhood Special Event Permit, approved temporary liquor license for Lake Elmo Rotary, second quarter budget report and dashboard, approved security reduction for North Star Second Edition, accept water main improvements and approved security reduction for the Primrose School, authorized geotechnical services for the Section 16 Phase 2 sanitary sewer extension, approved pay request number 1 for the CASA 14 water main improvements, approved pay request number 2 for the 2026 street improvements project, approved task order for Bolton and Mink for preliminary design phases, South Water Treatment Plant, Approve 2026 ICMA conference airfare, approve delegation of authority, and that concludes our consent agenda items. I'll entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda items.
Move to approve the consent agenda items.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Hearing none, consent agenda is approved. This evening on our regular agenda, our first item is approved to continue government relations relationship with Larkin and Hoffman.
Mr. Mayor and council members, this last legislative session, we did partner with Larkin and Hoffman for legislative representation. And then we did have a presentation and a workshop from Larkin and Hoffman, and one of the questions we did ask council was, do you want to continue this relationship? Council was interested in that, and so tonight we have Brandon Strickland here with Larkin and Hoffman to go over the proposal that was submitted, and that is in your packet for consideration.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Brandon Strickland. I work for Larkin Hoffman Public Affairs. I won't bore you with what happened last session. My managing director, Margaret Vessel, went over that with you at a previous meeting. I do just a little bit of background about myself. So I've been with Larkin Hoffman for 4 years. Before that, I was with the Senate for 3 years. I've been doing this a while. I've loved this work, and it is great. And it was a great honor to represent the city of Lake Elmo. So, just to begin, I'm here because the city has expressed interest in continuing their relationship with Larkin Hoffman. Thank you for that. On our team would be me. I would be the lead of the contract. I would be the lead contact for the city with Nicole and the mayor. On my team would be Margaret Vessel, our managing director, and then our newest member of the team would be Jess Tabbitt. So those would be our primary three who would be available to you to represent the city. But I also wanted to highlight, when you hire Larkin Hoffman, you're not just getting those three, you do have access to the entire team. So for example, Nicole expressed interest in broadband franchising, I believe it was. We do represent telecoms clients, so we have team members who are familiar with that broadband space. So you will have access to everybody with resources on our team. So with that being said, I will skip over the termination and insurance piece. I wanted to go over with you kind of what to expect looking forward into the 2027 session. So as you all know, as elected officials, we have a election coming up. The primary election is on August 11th. We'll have a clearer picture of what the legislature will look like next year. All 201 members, including all 4 constitutional offices, are on the ballot this year. So what I propose as a beginning strategy for the city, I propose that we start with meeting with key DNR leadership. Bob Meyer is the Legislative Affairs Director at the Department of Natural Resources, so we'll have to meet with him. They're very familiar with the issue. We kind of know where they stand, but we have to do our due diligence and do our formalities. As the governorship changes hands, that leadership will likely switch to new members, so we'll have to meet with them as well. And then based on the outcome of the election as well, we'll have to form our coalition based on that. So that brings me to my next point, is develop a campaign, a grassroots campaign that connects you all to coalition members and key legislators. So if the legislature is not likely at all to maintain the current tie that it is in. Either, I'm not gonna say who I predict will win, but it is likely to be a full-on one-party control of the House. So if it is DFL control, Peter Fisher, who is the co-chair this year, will be the environment chair for next year. That will be an uphill battle. We've met with him, or we've presented to his committee. We've heard his feelings on how he feels about this project. However, if it is a Republican majority in the House, Josh Heintzman will be the environment chair, and that will be a much smoother and clearer path forward. A key piece of this, though, is District 41A itself. So as you all know, District 41A, which includes Lake Elmo, is a purple up-in-the-air district. Should Wayne Johnson win his election, we'll continue with him as the chief author, we'll potentially continue with him as the chief author. It depends on who has the majority. We want to be successful, and sometimes if he is on the wrong side of a power struggle, it can be, we need to make sure that whoever has the reins of power have a direct interest in making sure that bill author is successful. So, that being said, a lot will depend on what happens in November. But he is likely to be the chief author for next year, and he's very familiar with the issue, and so we can keep going with him. Second, in 2023, when the original bill passed, it was Senate File 2047, there were a number of legislators who were on that bill, including Peter Fisher, which I find a little bit confusing, but he was also on that. I believe we start there for our coalition members. So Representative Breon Curran was the chief author in the House for the original bill. I believe they should be considered again should we go forward and the DFL maintain their majority. If not, if the Republicans maintain the majority or win the majority, I think we should stick with Wayne Johnson. Now Senator Hemmingson Yeager, she's now a senator. She was a House rep when this all started. We should also, let me back up. We should start with members of the 14 communities that are a part of this 5-mile radius moratorium for the well situation. So we'll start there. For the House, I believe it should stay either Representative Wayne Johnson or Breon Curran. For the Senate, I believe it should stay Judy Seeberger. If not, we'll have to assess if Tom DePel, who's a current House rep, does happen to be successful in November, we'll tap him to be the next lead. So that's kind of the framework for how we're going to approach the next session. Then we'll have to secure bill hearings. We'll have to get language drafted, secure bill hearings, get our script ready, and then we'll look for avenues. I mean, I believe the avenue to do this is the Environment Omnibus Bill, but depending on the makeup of the legislature, we might be able to do this as a standalone. I think so the ultimate goal is to allow the city of Lake Elmo to drill a well. And in the 2023 bill, there's one word that kind of keeps you from being able to do that. It's may. We want to change that to a must, and order the DNR to do that. I propose we meet with Senate Council to make sure that we have our language secure, that the DNR can't weasel out of it. I believe the first time this passed around, the first time this passed, the city was under the impression that this language was directive, and it was not. And the DNR kind of shirked their responsibility. So I believe we should meet with Senate Council and draft this in a way that they're legally obligated to follow. So those are the two. That will happen probably during session. Senate Council usually is not available outside of session, or they're very hard to reach. Yeah. And so, third, I know the city has also expressed interest in capital investment. This time around, we were unsuccessful. We were able to get a modification to the bill that would allow you all to use funds that were appropriated in 2023. So that didn't cost you money, so thank God for that. But should the city decide to continue with capital investment, there's a whole new round this year. I know that they were able to get the bonding bill back on track. Usually it's done in even years. This year they finally got it back. It's been odd years the last 4 years, but now they're back on the even year track. So what will happen from here is we'll have to get our bill drafted. We have to finalize the language of the project. We'll get our bill drafted. We'll have to get it heard. And the key thing to do between now and the 2028 bill is to get on the bonding tour. That is absolutely key if we want to be included in a bonding bill. And so there's a number of things that have to happen. There's two tours. There's the House and then there's the Senate. And given the retirements and the rules of the legislature, both the House and Senate, regardless of what happens, regardless of who wins the majority, will have different bonding chairs. So Sandy Pappas, the longtime legislator from St. Paul, I believe she served 43 years. She's retiring. And then Chair Lee, who is, he has served the last 6 years in the House as bonding chair. House rules state that you can't serve more than 3 terms consecutively in a chairship. So he's out. So he's probably gonna be some other chair. I predict it's gonna be Ways and Means, but you didn't hear that from me. So if it's Republicans, it will be Mary Franzen. So that would be kind of clear there. So that will be the path forward for capital investment. So we'll need to do all that. We'll need to get our bills. We'll need to get on that bonding tour. And then from then we'll need to push and hammer. Additionally, Mr. Mayor and Nicole, you both came to the Capitol, and I believe Clark was with us. We included in all of this, there's a day on the Hill, and we welcome all of you to join, where we met with key legislators and committee chairs. I have my list somewhere here, but we were able to meet with bonding chair Sandy Pappas. We were able to meet with Republican co-chair Josh Heitzman, as well as a number of other key legislators, Steve Green, the environment minority lead. Depending on what happens in November, he'll either continue to be the minority lead next year or he'll be the chair himself. So, and that would be really good for the city because he does not like the DNR one bit. And we also met with a number of key legislators, Marge Fogelman, she's the vice chair of the House Capital Investment Committee, the vice Republican chair of the House Capital Investment Committee, and Senator Eric Pratt, who's running for Congress, Senator Andrew Lang, who's very close to leadership, and Senator Nathan Wiesenberg, who also does not like the DNR very much. So, with that being said, I will move to my 4th point, which I kind of already covered, which will be during session scheduling, getting those hearings, getting the testimony written, one-pagers drafted. I have helped draft one-pagers in the past, so I'm happy to refine the messaging there. And yeah, getting those materials in the hands of key committee members is what I do. So, last but not least, you have the fees there, and then, should you decide that we're not meeting your needs, you obviously can terminate us at any time you choose. So with that, I will conclude my presentation and stand for any questions.
Councilmember Holtz.
Thank you for that. How much has, in this case, Larkin and Hoffman stayed current on the East Metro Working Water Group that arose from the 2023 legislation?
So I had a conversation with Clark and about last week when the last meeting happened. So as of right now, my understanding of the East Metro Working Group is they're running through all of the studies to kind of find a viable solution to have a good way to recharge the Prairie du Chien Jordan aquifer. I hope I said that right.
Yeah.
And so the big study, and I believe Chair Fisher is kind of hanging his hat on this, is lake augmentation, pumping water in from another larger source. I believe Mississippi River was one. I believe Gem Lake was another one. But pumping in that water to help recharge the aquifer and raise the water levels on White Bear Lake. Speaking with Clark, I believe he said that the cost for that project ranged anywhere between $250 million to $1 billion, which is insanely expensive. I don't believe, not that I'm trying to say anybody has any money or not, but I don't believe the 14 cities that are included in that 5-mile radius will want to come up with that. And quite frankly, the legislature can't afford that price tag either. So I believe getting this changed from a may to a must is key.
Well, and that's, to phrase this still as a question, the reason why I asked that question is because the cost solutions that could help are far harder. Do you think they would be far harder in your view than the language change?
Oh yeah, they're way.
Okay.
They're quite frankly non-starters. I don't know where the money would come from. I mean, it would have to come from essentially the federal government, and I wouldn't even know where to start there. So, To me, I'm having a hard time with why why Chair Fisher has such a, is so against this, especially because he signed on to the first iteration of the bill. So that'll be something for me to figure out. But just changing one word and keeping, because the reason this bill was passed in the first place was to address this issue. And so, to me, making the DNR, hold true to their word would be much easier than trying to make them cough up $250 million.
And I don't know if he gave it as part of the update, the cost to bring surface water to Lake Elmo was roughly $200 million, which would absolve us of the DNR issue. $200 million.
$200 million.
Was that a question?
Did you hear that?
I didn't hear that.
All right.
Yeah. That's good to know. I'm gonna write that down.
Any other questions from council? Thank you, Mr. Strickland, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the received proposal and scope of services from Larkin and Hoffman.
Second.
We have a motion and second discussion. Councilmember Holtz.
I fully support this. We saw the value gain for our city and our residents this past session in that Larkin and Hoffman was able to attain changes in legislation that saved the city and our taxpayers several $1 million for the Lake Elmo Avenue 36 project. So they already proved their worth, and obviously we had a discussion on this already, but the impact for the White Bear Lake lawsuit and being able to find a solution is truly worth its weight in salt. Is that the right phrase for that? Weight in salt? Not even close. It's close, very close. It's really worth it, in my view.
Any other discussion?
I'll just add that I also am very much in favor of this. I think this is the long game that we have to play. I know we got it started last year, and we're just kind of in maybe the early parts of the first quarter here. I think this is something we have to kind of plan to be doing long-term, stay in the know. There's obviously quite a bit of moving pieces that are hard to stay up on unless you're there. So I think this is a relationship that's important, and it's going to be a relationship that helps us extend that to many other parties where we need to be in the know. So definitely in favor of this.
Okay. Anyone else? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion to approve receive proposal and scope of services from Larkin Hoffman, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion is approved. Thank you. Next on the agenda, preliminary plat and planned unit development, Limerick Village.
All right, good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I'll pull the presentation up. So, the last time that the city council reviewed this project was in a concept plan, or actually an EAW form. And so we are looking at a preliminary plat and planned unit development proposed by Maplewood Development on the subject property. You can see the location generally depicted on the screen. We're looking at two parcels that are just under 80 acres. No wetlands on the property. Currently, that is primarily just tilled farmland. The EAW was the last review, as I mentioned. That review is completed with a negative declaration in 2025. So in addition to those 4 rounds of concept plan review, kind of feeding into the project plans, that has led to the proposal that's now in front of the city. So the site plan for the project is shown on the screen. We'll talk about a lot of the different elements. I'll try and be brief, but there's quite a lot to cover in this project. So just starting with some of the highlights on the site plan here, you can see the development will connect 5th Street North, which is a connection that has been planned over the last couple of comp plans in this area of the city. So this would partially build the 5th Street North connection in this part of the community. You would also have a connection down through this Limerick Parkway to Hudson. Hudson Avenue, which would also be, or Hudson would be realigned from its current alignment, brought up closer to the subject property, and that realigned Hudson would be it'd be compatible or conforming with the plans for that connection as well. So this project will include quite a bit of roadway infrastructure and utility infrastructure off-site to bring what you're seeing, I guess, up to standards with the requirements of the city for a non-contiguous project. So another unique piece of this project is that there's a pretty large central open space area that's split up between roughly 9 acres of parkland and about the same amount of infiltration and wet pond area. So large open space there. We'll talk about the different residential elements in this review as well. Just looking at the land use side of things on the zoning map, you'll see this is a rural transition site. That is a zoning district that's kind of like that holding district for future development. The current, or the proposed zoning district, the base districts, because this would be a PUD, those base districts would be medium density and high density residential with a PUD overlay with those flexibilities. Also, somewhat unique to this property is the way that it's split on the city's comprehensive plan's future land use map. We've talked about this before. We've got kind of a funny diagonal line that separates the MDR and HDR areas. So you can see that generally reflected on the figure on the screen here. Staff have reviewed the densities accordingly. And according to the way that we review density, that's consistent with Met Council, both elements of the project site would be within the allowed density ranges. So in the MDR, that's 4 to 8 units per acre, and in the HDR, that's 8 to 15 units per acre. I think just worth noting here, if you just look at this as like a blended density, you're at roughly 11 to 12 units per acre. So you do have a preliminary plat in your packet, and this is actually what that plat looks like. Relatively straightforward, but you can see the different types of residential units shown on the plat, from single-family homes to attached townhomes to the lots for multifamily. So for a project to qualify for a planned unit development, they have to meet 3 different criteria, being over 5 acres, having a certain amount of open space, and maintaining the planned street grid. All 3 of those are met. There are also PUD objectives, goals the city has established for PUDs to meet. There are a number of those objectives this project would be, or could be considered consistent with. From a preliminary plat standpoint, we have reviewed a number of different elements of the project against city's requirements. Here again is that site plan if we need to come back. I'd like to start off with the bulk standards table, and it's quite large for this project, so I apologize for the small text, but the gist of things is that almost all of the elements of this project are meeting zoning except for those that are highlighted. So I'll walk through those standards. First, the detached single-family units, the minimum is 7,000 square feet in the MDR area. They range from just around 5,400 to just over 26,000, depending on which single-family lot you're looking at. And then as you shift to the attached single-family, the townhomes that are proposed in the MDR area are meeting. In the HDR area, the townhomes are at 1,160 square feet. That's under the 7,050 square foot, or 1,750 square foot per unit minimum. Lastly, the multifamily units are, depending on how you look at the lots, they are also needing the flexibility on a per unit basis. So the city's code requires 1,800 square feet per unit. On average, we're looking at around 1,500 square feet per unit. And then lastly, you can see that the single family lots have a proposed 5-foot side yard setback. So we'll talk about some of those different elements of the site. I just want to start with the phasing plan. So what you see on this plan is the proposed phasing in green. That is what's proposed to the improvements that are proposed in phase 1. And so that would start as early as earthwork potentially this year. The first part of that project would be to bring in the utilities from where they currently terminate on Hudson Boulevard, and then also making a water main connection to the west. And then within the site, the parts of the project that are in the first phase include all the streets, and then the single-family homes, or the single-family lots, and the attached townhomes that are in the MDR area. And then in a future phase, or phases, you would have the urban townhomes, we're calling them, on the northeast corner, and then those multifamily buildings. So just walking through the different elements of the site, think about it as kind of being in like 4 different quadrants. So the first quadrant being those single-family homes. You can see it just a standard detail for those lots that have been proposed. Then looking at the typical patio-style townhomes, these are the townhomes that are mostly in the MDR area. These are front-loaded townhomes, I would say. They're more of a, what you might see as a traditional townhome in terms of design. Then we get into the multifamily area of the site. You can see that there are different three different multifamily buildings. At this point, we don't know, but I would assume that they're market rate. Don't have any more detail on that. We also have, as you move a little bit further to the east, a senior living. That's a 120-unit building. And then as you go on the northeast corner, these are what we would call the urban townhomes. These are slightly smaller footprint townhome lots, and there would be, as proposed, a private courtyard on one of the blocks. All of these townhomes would be considered to be rear-loaded, which would mean that they have an entry. If you look at the entries that are facing 5th Street North or Manning Avenue, those would have an appearance of the front of the townhome without any appearance of garages from the street, that they would be served by a sidewalk in front of the townhome and then rear-loaded to these internal public streets. So with respect to the different types of units, the city's code does have specific performance standards. For single-family detached units, these are relatively light. Those units do need to have parking on driveways or in a garage. Those things are met. Primary facades need to be oriented to the street. For single-family attached or townhomes, the buildings need to be smaller than 10 units, or a CUP needs to be received. And they all need public street frontage or another conditional use permit. And then lastly, they have to have shared open spaces of at least 500 square feet per unit in the MDR and 300 in the HDR. All of those criteria are met. With multifamily dwellings in the high-density area, no parking is permitted in front yard areas. Basically what that means is between the building and the street. Common open spaces are required, particularly 200 square feet per unit, and those open space requirements are met. City also has a design standards manual. This has performance standards for site and building design. The long story short here is that in phase 1, those single family and patio townhomes, those elements of the site are consistent with the standards that are in the manual. The only thing that wasn't really clear was the siding. In particular, the standards require, or rather they exempt the vinyl siding in MDR and HDR areas for townhomes. When we get into phase 2, we have similar requirements for townhomes in terms of design. And actually, the site appears to meet the city's design standards for townhomes and multifamily buildings, particularly just the way the site is laid out is generally consistent. Something that you look at is where's the parking located. Parking is generally screened for these apartment buildings. In particular, it's screened as well as they can internal to the site. Now, when we do get into the urban townhome area, this is where I think we probably have the most specific design-related comments, and so I've consolidated those. They're in the staff report, but I wanted to just present them here. So first and foremost, what we're seeing on the project plans, you're seeing parking that's proposed in these are public streets, and there's 90-degree angle parking if you kind of squint at this map. That's not a city standard, and staff are recommending removal of those 90-degree bump-in parking areas. parking is actually generally met, or at least the minimum requirements for parking are met by the combination of garage and driveway parking spaces. So there is not a need for additional parking, although one-sided street parking would provide additional opportunity. Certain lots in this plan do create some driveway conflicts. If I change my pointer to a laser pointer, there's a couple of awkward lots in some of these locations that have driveways that are kind of at funny angles, and the easiest way to remove that conflict is to remove the units. So that's one thing. Residential units also around this private courtyard, there are a couple of instances where we have units really close together, and so I think addressing that would be something that the city should consider. We also have sidewalks that are shown basically 20 feet from the front face of the apartment building or the townhomes, and the city typically has a standard of 25 feet for sidewalks. This is to help, with vehicle length now, 25 feet is kind of the standard to avoid overhangs onto the sidewalk. Lastly, there's just a general note, but we do have ideas on how to address this. There are some kind of connectivity concerns with the sidewalks that are shown here. A couple of small tweaks to the plans I think should be in order to help kind of make better connectivity to the surrounding sidewalk and trail network from within this part of the site. So moving on to tree preservation, what you're seeing on the screen now is the removals plan for trees. There is a farmstead on the property that is surrounded by mostly elm trees. Those trees would all be removed, and mitigation for those removals is required. The developer's team proposed a landscaping plan that you can see on the screen here. Generally, this plan is showing a fair amount of landscaping, but would need to be amended to include the mitigation trees required from the removals. So that is noted in the city's landscape architect memo. This project is proposed with stormwater reuse system, and so what you're seeing on this slide is the shaded areas. Those would be this parts of the site that are irrigated with that system, notably everything but the single-family lots. So I've kind of already mentioned these items on landscaping. Buffering is one consideration, particularly to the south. For those apartment units, that's a consideration. It's actually a requirement that the more intense land use create buffering. So in this situation, the properties to the south would develop as business park. They would technically be more intense than the apartments, and so they would be required normally to provide the buffering. However, there are parts of the site where buffering may be needed between, for example, the apartment buildings and the single-family lots. That being said, there is a private park area that can be used for that purpose. Parking, generally speaking, the site is meeting the parking requirements. We will need to do a more in-depth review when the multifamily comes in. From a traffic perspective, the city is, through its comp plan and other planning processes, anticipating the level of traffic that would be seen. So I want to spend a little bit of time on access. As I mentioned, the project will realign Hudson Boulevard. That is a standard that's been talked about throughout the process here. It would also construct a portion of 5th Street North, as I mentioned. With phase 1, that will, two of those things will create an important 2 points of access to the residential units. There are some challenges with the 5th Street North connection that we will get into in greater detail. Before I do that, I just want to show, here is a slide that kind of depicts some of those amendments to the sidewalk and trails that are shown in the development. Trails shown in this kind of purple color, blue, and then sidewalks in green. So this is just a depiction of what some of those adjustments might look like to help improve connectivity through and across the site. Getting back to the access though, what we're seeing on the screen now is what was initially depicted as access, particularly on this Fifth Street North corridor. So if I go back, when I zoom in, what we're looking at, and I'll just use the pointer again. What we're looking at is this general segment of Fifth Street North. So I'll zoom back in. This is the access to the property to the north. It's called the Screeton property, or it's what we've called it. The Screeton family owns that property. The access currently depicted in the plans that were reviewed shows the access spacing standards met that the city has for Fifth Street North. That would create a pretty long gravel driveway to the bin site that the Screeton family uses for their farming operations. And so they have proposed with the developers team, the developers team has proposed an alternative access to the bin site that is depicted on the screen here. And I apologize, it's a little hard to see the line work on this image, but generally, you're seeing Manning Avenue running north to south and that Fifth Street segment here. The proposal is to, instead of having that really pretty long gravel access coming from the east, the proposal is to have a right-in to the bin site that's at a much shorter distance along this Fifth Street North, a right-in that will allow some circulation within the bin site, and then a right-out back down to Manning Avenue. So this is a solution that has been proposed by the development team. It's been discussed by both the developer, the Screeton family, and Washington County. Generally, all of those parties seem to be on board with this proposed approach. And I know that the developers team is here and happy to speak to the rationale for their proposal. But that is currently this kind of like interim solution that's proposed for access that will allow for less impact on the Screeton family's operations and a little bit, I guess, a little bit easier to construct for the developer. So just want to run through some pros and cons to this proposal. So, the pros are that, Washington County seems to support this solution. It allows for the development to move forward because the parties seem to mostly be on board. It maintains the current access situation that the bin site has and allows them to have more minimal impacts to their operation and the circulation. And it can and will be removed with future development. So should the Screeton family parcel redevelop, that access would need to be removed and a new access meeting the standards would have to be installed. The cons of approving something that's not fully consistent with the Fifth Street standards include just having inconsistent access spacing from the current standard, having an interim condition where we really don't have, a date in mind where this would end. And then, the potential risk that if the city does have to modify or remove that access for any reason, if there are concerns, that would potentially be at the city's cost. So risks there for approving something that's not quite standard.
With regard to that,
Yep.
Nathan, didn't we have a situation similar to that on Manning and Easton Village? At which time when another access was created, the access onto Manning was removed? Are you familiar with that?
Yeah,
at
the
all?
Easton Village access, yep.
Yes. This be,
Not dissimilar.
yeah, okay, thank you.
The one thing with Easton Village, I believe, is that was, the interim access was going to be removed when that developer had finished a future phase that that developer had control over. In this situation, the city doesn't necessarily have control over the timeline
But
of the development.
if something happens to Screeton or it goes to get developed or something, that could be a condition upon approval, correct?
Yeah, I think, if things on the farming site remain as is, I don't think there's any reason to require changes, but then if there are any actions in the future, like a minor subdivision or even a full-on subdivision, that's the point where that access has to get revisited.
Thank you.
Yep. So I just want to dive in just a little deeper here on Fifth Street North design standards. So the city's design standards are summarized on the screen. You've got a 100-foot right-of-way requirement for this parkway design, connection. This is a collector, a more high-volume connection for the community. The standards also call for, on either side of that, 10-foot drainage and utility easements. So you're looking at a 120-foot corridor, generally for, right-of-way and other purposes. Included in that 100-foot right-of-way is a bituminous trail connection on the north side of Fifth Street North throughout the entire community, and a concrete sidewalk on the south side. So those are the standards, in addition to having boulevard trees. One of the things that we understand the developer is proposing is on the segment that we've just talked about, not building that trail connection right away. So I'll let the developer speak to their proposal. They're here and, have a couple of plans they'd like to show you. The impacts to the city requiring full, and let me back up and say, at this point, staff are recommending approval of the project with the condition that there is full compliance with the Fifth Street North design standards, except for the proposed interim access. So the impacts of that requirement would be that we require a trail connection now throughout the whole entirety of Fifth Street North. Have a 10-foot drainage and utility easement on both sides, including the north side, which isn't presently shown on the plans. Have a sidewalk on the south side now as a requirement. And then there could be, drainage concerns that I'll let the developers speak to, but not allowing for any stormwater management features in the city's right-of-way area. So I'll let the developer kind of present on their thoughts on that issue, but this is kind of where staff are at with their recommendation right now. Quickly talking about parkland dedication, this development does clearly create a demand on the city's parks and trails system. The developer is proposing 9 acres of parkland or thereabout, and so that's definitely satisfying the demand under the city code for parkland. And it's also satisfying the need for a community park in an area where we do have a search area. So I think this park area, it's been reviewed already by the city. It's the city's park commission was supportive of this as well. It's a good way to meet the standard, and it's central for all of the residents in this future development.
Does the infiltration wet pond count towards that 9 acres?
No, it does not.
Okay.
So
So that is
it's an
surrounding
addition.
area.
Yep, if you look at the total acreage, it's just under 17 acres. So a pretty sizable part of this development is what I would consider to be just generally open space. It's either park or that stormwater feature, which, can kind of complement the park.
So stormwater reuse areas counts for open space.
Yeah, yep. And that would be consistent with other prior approvals. All right, so looking at review comments to date, the fire department has a memo in the packet. Most important thing there is making sure that there's 2 points of access, in addition to other requirements. The city engineering memo does on the screen say May 27th, but was updated on July 7th, and that's in the packet now. City's landscape architect provided an updated memo. We understand that the developers team is in process with South Washington Watershed District. That's pretty important, with this size of development. Washington County have reviewed the project and have provided plans. We have not gotten any comments from West Lakeland Township. To summarize things for you, we have PUD flexibilities summarized on the screen here. Minimum lot size for single-family detached, the attached urban townhomes, and the multifamily residential, and side yard setbacks for the single-family detached units. Other flexibilities that are discussed here include the access for the Screeton property that I shared with you, and potentially considerations for other Fifth Street North design standards.
Is that the driveway situation that you mentioned? That's just the standard that we aim for 20, so that wouldn't, for 20 feet, or excuse me, that we aim for 25 feet instead of 20? So that wouldn't be flexibility that they're asking for there?
Not from zoning.
Okay.
Not from zoning. So the zoning code in the high-density residential district is 20 feet. So they're meeting the zoning code, but generally, if we look at
Got it.
how do we avoid those overhangs, those conflicts,
So
it's
it's something maybe we
25
have to
feet.
look at down the road.
It might be worth it, depending on the type of development. It could be maybe a specific standard.
Okay.
All right, so any other questions on flexibilities? Findings, so staff are recommending that the city can make findings for approval, and those are in the report and resolution. The city council does have a number of options, including, what you see here. I would note to you that the review deadline is August 5th, which means I think you just have one more meeting before that 120-day period is over. Staff are recommending, if approved, there be 12 conditions for approval. I've talked about a number of them. There are fairly standard conditions, which include just satisfaction of the staff memos, standard conditions like having agreements, fees paid, things like that. And then the unique conditions summarized here include an approved access plan for the property to the north that's generally agreeable to the developer, the Screeton family, Washington County, and the city. Having the developer's team provide easements to the city on the city's standard form for work to be done for those offsite improvements. So that's the Hudson Boulevard realignment, offsite utilities, revising the urban townhome area, including the sidewalks and trails, as I mentioned, stormwater reuse being included in the plans, and Fifth Street North meeting the design standards. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on this project on June 8th. There were no comments that they received from the public. I don't think that there have been any comments received since. Planning Commission did unanimously recommend support of the project. We have three motions, one to adopt the PUD ordinance, one to approve the preliminary plat and PUD, and another for summary publication. So those are on the screen here. I am happy to stand for questions. I would note too that the developers team is here and would like to share more about their project with you.
Questions? Councilmember Holtz?
Quick question, because you had brought up buffering as well.
Yep.
And I'm not seeing, I see a couple trees on the east side for buffering on Manning. How does our code speak to buffering when it comes to this, then along a county road? And I don't, was there a plan to be, yeah, I mean, there's literally, along the east side, there's 3 trees behind there. But does that conform? Because it's not a higher usage or lesser usage, it's a road, but it's a question our residents will definitely be asking.
Yeah, I think actually if I'm thinking back to the Inwood commercial project, you'll recall that we talked about, the buffering standard not really applying to the road as a land use. And so I think, the primary goal was to have the urban townhome units and the apartment building oriented towards the street to at least have, a nicer appearance from Manning Avenue. I think Manning Avenue is gonna be in maybe 4 lanes, 2 in each direction. So it's a pretty high volume, pretty big roadway that would provide a pretty, wide buffer from West Lakeland Township and any land uses that come up there. So it's not been brought up in the conversation this far, but that's where we're at.
And then you had mentioned in terms of conversations of buffering on the south, and yes, our code does say when the higher intensive use goes in, it's on them. But I mean, I've seen it where it doesn't always play out that way, and it turns out to be pretty burdensome when that happens, and really hard to be done right. We saw that off of Hudson Boulevard by Lake Elmo Ave. What type of shared opportunities or what type of solutions do you think would be reasonable to be pursuing where it's a two-way street, where, I mean, if we're, say hypothetically, we support this as a PUD, which means there has to be a value gain to the city, we can place certain restrictions on here. Would it mean having a berm? Would it mean adding additional space where then in the future someone else is putting in the vegetation? Like, what does that look like? Because I know full well we've had concerns before when business comes in and there's residential next to it. And the need for, well, why didn't this occur? Why was it not thought of when the residential went in first?
Yeah, so if you look at the south property line of the site, there's not a ton of space for landscaping as it's currently designed. So I think the buffering, frankly, would be of of benefit most to these residents and these future residents that would be living in the apartments. You know, they do have a pretty large parking area that again would create a, you know, a separation from that property boundary, and the distance is an important part of buffering, but it's not the only thing. If we think about what the standard is, it's, you know, a first floor, you know, like a fence basically, or vegetation. A fence in this case on what are proposed to be 3-story buildings, which aren't super tall, but, you know, 3 stories. A fence isn't gonna do a ton for screening, I don't think. So I think you'd probably prefer to have some type of vegetation there. And if the city was trying to require something in this situation, I think you could, you know, have a situation where there's kind of shared responsibility for buffering. You know, maybe there's a 20-foot span shared between the north and south that would create an opportunity for trees to grow in a healthy manner.
And then in terms of the height, because it's not, it says what the standards are, and it says has not been shown yet for the heights, but obviously we have 3-story and 4-story. Is the intent there that it's 3 stories of units plus a top, or is it 2 stories of units with then obviously a roof line that takes up the third? Because we had this conversation
That's a
with a
good
prior
question.
unit
Yeah.
where
Yep.
they wanted 4 stories with a flat roof, and some on council.
Yeah, so we're currently looking at plans that show or depict 3 stories, but we're not sure what the buildings are gonna look like. If the buildings are proposed with flat roofs, it'll be not a ton taller than, you know, 3 stories, which is like, I don't know, 30 to 40 feet tall.
Gotcha.
If they're hipped roofs, then you're looking at, you know, that midpoint of the, depending on the pitch of the roof, it could be even taller.
And then last question, is one of the exceptions being asked for is the minimum lot size. And I, feel free to go back to those numbers if you want. But I'm curious from staff standpoint, because overall number-wise, the number of units is on the higher end of what's allowed within the zone, but is within the range. Is it feasible in staff's view that if it had been on the lower end within the range, that the lot sizes could have been much closer to what the minimums are?
Well, it's a little bit of like a math equation, if you will. So, you know, to have a higher average would mean fewer units.
Yep.
I mean, in theory, you could accomplish that. I'll let the developer speak to their perspective on that question. You know, all things being equal, just for example, if you kept the same number of multifamily units and said, you know, meet the standard, there's 2 ways to do that. You either reduce there's 2 considerations for the multifamily, just as an example to me. You could reduce the number of units, or you could enlarge the site so that the same number of units is now meeting the average square foot per unit of 1,800, you know, in that example. So, you know, what that could look like in one scenario is reducing the park area and enlarging the size of the multifamily building lots, or reducing the number of units on the same size lots.
Well, I mean, I ask that because HDR, for the amount of acres that there is, the range could be 295 to 551. The proposed is 524, which is on the upper end of
I
that.
see. Yep.
If it was 295, would the math work out where it's far closer or even meeting the minimum lot size? Because now it's 295 units instead of 524.
Yeah, so I can just kind of say in the abstract, if you were to reduce the number of lots, then you would in theory be able to have larger lots, right? Because you have additional area the other lots can use. It's hard to say how this is going to be meeting the density ranges with a reduction in units, because it's dependent on where and what it's going to look like at the end of the day, and what acreages are assigned to what units. So it gets to be a little bit harder to speculate on that, but in theory, I mean, you could say yes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, as I recall in Met Council, we asked about the blending, correct, for calculation purposes, and they said
which you
no, it's
cannot
got
do.
to be kept separate for some reason. Gotcha. Thank you.
That was my question, but I wanted to direct it towards the developer, and I want to hear from them specifically why these variances are needed, and why the requirements in our code can't be met.
Let's listen to the developer.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna let you go ahead, Mario.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. My name is Mario Cucharel. I'm the owner of Maplewood Development Company. We're the developer of the site. I can only say that with regard to the type of restrictions that were placed on us in the development of this site by the Met Council, what really ends up happening with sites like this is so much of our unit count is pushed into the apartments, which frankly don't really yield us the kind of revenue it takes to build the site. It's really that simple. I would also venture to guess, as we get into the future and you have proposals in front of you to approve the apartment units, it may very well be that we're not gonna get to the numbers that we even have on this site plan, simply because market conditions will dictate that, and these are market rate apartments across this entirety of the site. Very difficult, trying to make sure that we didn't have any changes to the comp plan based on a sort of irregular line between the MDR and the HDR and some of the requirements for that. There was never really any particular impetus to increase units. That's not what we were after. We were simply trying to meet the Met Council numbers. And, you know, as you know, through a variety of iterations that we came back with, that this is where we ended up. This is not, frankly, not new from anything that we worked on for the last 3 years with you, and I guess I don't have another answer for you other than that. I really don't. I just had a couple of other comments, unless there's other questions right now. Certainly could stand for questions later, but.
Why don't you go ahead?
Okay. One thing that didn't get brought up was the construction of Hudson Road. I wanted to make sure it was clear that we plan to leave the existing Hudson Road in place while we're building the new one, so there wouldn't be any interruption in service, especially for the school buses and so forth, if that's the direction they're headed. So that's one thing that's happening there. We also haven't really talked about it, but there would be, with Washington County in our discussions, there's approval for the bladed intersections at both 5th and 2nd. So those are items that we've been talking about with the county. And I'll let our project manager, Warren Tracy, speak a little bit more to that if you have any further questions with that. Generally speaking, we think we've got a good plan, certainly one that meets the requirements of the Met Council for this site and meets some of the requirements that you have for the higher density and medium density for your city. And we are ready to get started right away if at all possible. I do want to have Warren speak to the issue regarding 5th and some of the problems with that, especially with stormwater management and some of the flow from the old floodplain. But if there's any other questions, I can certainly come back up
Yeah,
and talk about that.
Mario, it was mentioned, Mr. First Nathan mentioned in the connected townhomes in the blue, in some of the corners where the driveways didn't really mesh up, if you recall that section that he motioned. Is there a workaround that for you guys? Is there a way for you to do, Clark saying yes?
Yeah, I think that one would be pretty easy.
Okay, all right.
I like the idea, though, that there's a little bit of an interesting set of lots in the development. I do think that contributes to the attractiveness of it, and
Okay.
so that might be something to think
I'm
about.
just curious. So the phasing starts again with the furthest westerly units, is that correct?
Well, really what we're doing is, we'll have a couple different spreads out here that'll take care of building Hudson Road, and then also all of the arterial roads really throughout the project. That'll open up the project to future development.
Okay.
You know that, I mean, you know
Yeah,
this.
right,
And so that'll be the process.
okay. Anyone else?
I guess I just would like to dig in a little bit more, make sure I get answer to my question of, then again, as far as from the city standards that the deviations are being requested upon, what is it that's keeping you from being able to meet those requested, or excuse me, meet the requirements as written and instead needing those deviations?
Well, I think it's been a process along the line. We started out with what was a component of the regional park. Now we're meeting the requirement of essentially having a regional park. So that was done over the past, what, year and a half to 2 years. Then simply on the MDR area, we were trying to get to numbers that were gonna satisfy the Met Council. And this was the result. As I said before, there really isn't any change that we've made to that from the concept drawing up till now.
So the numbers, if we change these numbers currently to meet the requirements of the city of Lake Elmo, you're saying they would no longer meet the requirements of Met Council and the MDR?
I don't believe the MDR area, we were always right at the threshold of meeting that requirement in the MDR area. Was never any change from that I recall.
That's a correct statement.
Okay. I assume it's the same for HDR? Is it the same?
Well, I think it's a combination that we tried to set up the site from a workability standpoint and make sure that we were going to meet the minimums of that HDR area. The biggest component of that was the townhome section that would provide for the basis going forward to meet within the confines of the HDR area. I think we're within the range. I don't think we've changed a thing since our initial concepts and our reviews, but I think it's a true statement to say that we're on the higher end of that.
Nathan, sorry, can you just remind me, because I guess I'm just struggling a little bit with the Met Council requirement again. Is that for the overall density as a city that we're referencing here?
Yeah, so let me bring up we have a figure from the developers team that I think helps to illustrate this. So you're seeing here the split between MDR and HDR, right? On the MDR side of this development, the conversation or the comments from the developers team seem accurate, where they're on the MDR, they are on the lower end of the density range, meaning if they increase all of the lot sizes to meet the zoning standard, it's possible that they could come out of compliance. I don't know that we've seen, plan depicting that, so I don't, not 100% sure, but it feels accurate to say that, if they increase the lot sizes to meet the zoning, they could fall out of compliance on the comp plan. On the HDR side of things.
Sorry.
Yep.
If I could just stop you 1 second.
Yep.
Would it be a different outcome if instead of increasing all the lot sizes, sorry, never mind. Go ahead and continue.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, on the MDR, if you were to, just to take this thought a little further, if you were to increase the single-family lots to the minimum lot area under zoning and increase the number of attached townhomes, that is one way that you could both try to meet the standard. But I think we've looked at that in prior concepts, and it just didn't seem favorable to the city or the developer for that matter, because the number of single-family lots would drop below what feels like a contiguous neighborhood. On the HDR side of things, the development is on the higher end of that range, and that's from 8 to 15 units per acre is the range. And so part of the challenge in the HDR area is just with the shape of the project and the fact that you have stormwater ponds and park area that consume a fair amount of space, that would otherwise be used to meet the standards. The multifamily residential buildings, the three market rate and the one senior building, those lots could simply be increased in size to meet the standard. But you're seeing what you're seeing proposed here is the lots as they're currently depicted with a larger amount of open space. That being said, if it were to have to meet the letter of the law, you would either reduce the number of units or increase the size of the lots, and you likely would still be meeting with somewhere within an HDR range.
And reducing the number of lots, we're saying would probably only work in the HDR because of the Met Council for the MDR requirements wouldn't be met.
That feels like an accurate statement.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. And then, I guess, so back to the developer, then as far as for that, the 9 acres of parkland, which I'm assuming is the area in the pink above the stormwater and to the east of it, is that correct? That's the 9 acres or
No,
8 acres?
No, it flows all the way back down Limerick Parkway on the east side there.
Yeah, you were saying the right thing, Matt. You
So
included this.
what's I guess if you could just kind of talk about the intent, what you have planned for there, what that's gonna look like. I guess if you could just speak to that, you know, one of the issues that I've heard from residents in other developments where kind of the open space park area was put around the outlots is a lot of times it's not maintained well. There was really no plan for it. It was just open space that was put there, but it didn't turn out to really be parkland. So I guess if you could just speak to what your intention for that area is.
Well, we've provided some iterations on this, but this is a land dedication to the city for a public park. So,
Got it. So it'd be up to us then.
I can help address that specific question. So, the public park would be dedicated or deeded to the city.
Got it.
When the plat's recorded or around then.
Okay.
At that point, likely both the stormwater pond area and the public park would be owned by the city and then subsequently maintained and improved by the city.
Okay.
What about for the private park in the southwest corner and the private courtyard
Yep.
in the east central?
Those would remain owned by the developer or the property owner, whoever buys those areas, or HOA perhaps. Those are private amenities that would be privately maintained.
Is the intent then that an HOA will have to be created as a result of this development?
I think it's likely, but I'll look to the developer to see what their plans are.
But you're doing that of your own volition, and we are not requiring you to create an HOA.
yes.
So on that note, regarding those two private, like when you talk about, 1 acre private park and then a half acre, what generally do you see as the types of amenities that could fit in those locations?
Well, they're gonna be up to the builders of those units, but we'll work in concert with them, and we've done, I don't think anybody's done more master plans across the Twin Cities than we have, and we've worked with those groups to, put in some pretty nice stuff. I think it's a little bit early to really commit to something like that, and I don't wanna, provide some sort of, definitive, layout for you, but we provided iterations within the concepts, and nothing's gonna change from that.
Probably just pickleball courts.
Dear God. Can we say no pickleball allowed? Like, just put that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Could we take a minute just to address
Sure,
the
yeah.
discrete issue, and I'll let Warren.
Go for
take
it.
you to.
How do you get the,
Pointer.
you hit left click on the present here. Left click, pointer, laser pointer. There you go. That works.
Honorable Mayor and Council, thank you for giving us the opportunity here to discuss a couple of design exceptions that we think are necessary on the site. I also want to thank your city staff, planning staff, and consultant engineering and planning staff. They've been good to work with and helping us work through our design issues on this site. Lastly, I'd like to thank the David Screeton family that's here, that we've been working with very closely on a big issue relative to this project, and that's solving access to the Screeton grain storage facility that exists on, off Manning Avenue. So I'll begin with that. So the existing planned intersection of Manning Avenue and Ultimate Fifth Street is shown at this general location. Unfortunately, that conflicts with the overhead transmission line that exists along that corridor. Therefore, to construct the east-west Fifth Street corridor and provide an intersection onto Manning Avenue, everything has to be shifted south. So as you can see, the existing Screeton farm access has an access that's been granted to them long-term from the county at the existing half-section line. But because you can see the overhead power corridor right here, comes along about right like this. Because Fifth Street's moving, it's not feasible to leave the existing grain storage access at this location. It needs to be moved to, you can't have two access locations that close. And this will become a new signalized intersection, and we're expecting hopefully to get that done in 2027 as part of the project in cooperation with the county. You can see that everything moves to the south. So therefore, you can't have the existing farm access remain in this location. We came up with a number of design solutions to solve this. We met with Washington County on a couple of occasions to get their opinion on some suggestions, and then we met a number of times with the Screeton family, and this is what we've came up with. What this does, it provides this is the through street lane you can see on Fifth Street heading west. There'll be a center median. This provides a west to north move into the grain storage site. And it allows internal, movement throughout the site also. But the county has agreed to allow a right out southbound on Manning Avenue. And obviously that has to be a cautious movement by everyone involved, and that's all understood. So this concept that we're looking has been in general agreement with Washington County. We've made specifically with Frank Tickner, their deputy director, and Joe Gustafson, their lead traffic engineer. And it's also been reviewed by Wayne Sandberg, who's given his general blessing. There'll probably be some details to work out with Washington County on this. We'll have to get a new access permit from them for the new location. But we think we're on a good path for that. The Screeton family has also generally concurred with this alignment, and we're working on a private agreement with them. Obviously, we're gonna have to go onto their property to do some work associated with this project. And you can see about right there is the existing property line between us. So as we begin working on this overall alignment, other items start coming into view that create additional complications relative to the site. So if we're looking at the overall project, what this is called a contributory drainage area map. It shows all the stormwater that basically affects the project and the surrounding areas. The Screeton grain storage facility is right here in the northeast corner of the site, off our site. And there's about 80 acres of contributory storm drainage that, wouldn't you know, it comes right to that corner. And, we have to deal with that. That's about 100 CFS, or cubic feet per second, in a 100-year stormwater event. So once we're looking at that, we can then transition to a more detailed view of the Fifth Street and Manning Avenue intersection area. The grain storage facility is in this area. One thing we have to note is Fifth Street is somewhat effectively becoming a dam to drainage coming out of that area. Now, we've done our best to address that by trying to have an overland emergency overflow that will actually go over the road and into the Manning Avenue ditch section prior to backing up into the bid storage area. But the main thing we've done is within the, if this is the north curb line of the road, within the boulevard area, we've created a drainage swale to intercept that off-site 100 CFS and convey it east to the Manning Avenue ditch section. And it goes over the entrance road in what I would call a Texas crossing. It's a swaled road, and in the high flows, it'll go over that road and then get in some triple pipes and head down the county ditch. We're intercepting the smaller storm events with a stormwater pipe that will also pick up some of the Fifth Street storm drainage and bringing it into a small treatment pond before it discharges down the road. Unfortunately, to accommodate this drainage, and this is the exception we're talking about and Nathan has mentioned, we're unable to find a design solution that allows for the construction of a trail on the north side of Fifth Street. So what we're proposing is that the trail on the north side of Fifth Street not be constructed until future development occurs. Now, that's not the whole section. What we're talking about is deferring construction of the trail on the north side of Fifth Street from Limerick Parkway east to Manning. The 6-foot sidewalk will be constructed along the entire length of 6th Street all the way east to the new Manning intersection. And then there will be, when the signal's down, there will be a controlled push button crossing at that location. So we're deferring the trail, and as Nathan mentioned, we are also needing to have some drainage within the public right-of-way. Now, we understand staff's concern on this, and we've been working with staff on a lot of design solutions, and in reading the latest staff report, we're very confident we can address all the outstanding concerns through design. This one, however, to address this and also work with the neighboring property owner, protect his infrastructure up there, we are having to ask for a variance into the, the city's road section design, at least for a period of time. Now, that being said, obviously there is going to be a cost to build that future stretch of trail. We're willing to provide an escrow to the city for the estimated cost of that trail section. So as the development occurs to the north, it can be funded. The city would have the funds to do that. There is one more part of that discussion, though, and that is the Screetons are also concerned about a trail section that would cross their interim farm access or grain storage site access. They're concerned about people going through there on bicycles and e-bikes and just the conflict. So we believe we're proposing a acceptable phased construction plan for Fifth Street that would eliminate that trail between that section we mentioned on an interim basis until the property to the north develops. And that's our main outstanding issue we have on the site. Quite candidly, without that variance, I'm not quite sure how we solve it. The city does not, or I'm sorry, we as the developer do not have condemnation authority. The developer wants to maintain that property for tillable acreage and safety access into their site. So that ends my presentation on this. If you guys have any question, I'd be happy to take any.
Yes, sir, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Warren Tracy, I'm
All
sorry.
right. Mr. Tracy, on this picture you have up here, the orange hash line, is that tile in the field?
You mean these red?
No, not the red.
No, those are just grading district breaks, grading sub-catchment
The
areas.
double arrows?
The double arrowed ones?
Right.
Is that field tiled? No, okay.
And this is again, I believe it's,
So that's actually
7, 8.
water coming from the Cimarron property to the west and
right.
west of Mr. Screeton's
So
property.
this contributory drainage area all flows to this point. And
Right.
a 100-year storm is 9 inches of rain in like 12 hours, so.
100-year
it's gonna
storm
run off.
happens once every 6 months.
Seems to be a little more often than every 10 or 100 years, that's
Yes.
for sure. So I think, again, we're able to solve all other conditions and recommendations from your consulting engineer and your planning staff. This is one, we think we've came a long way. And again, I'd like to thank the Screetons again. They've been very accommodating when meeting and sitting out in the field and working on these design solutions. It is a consideration for sure that we have to protect their grain storage facility from backing up, since again, the Fifth Street is essentially becoming a bit of a dike to that existing storage facility for grain. As I mentioned earlier also, this indicates the 6-foot wide concrete sidewalk, and that will tie into the Manning Avenue trail section, and that can cross then to the north as part of that signalized intersection. We do understand that at some time in the future, Washington County is proposing a trail section heading north up to 10th Street also, on the west side.
Could you please go back to the larger, oh, that one, thank you.
Again, this is about 80 odd acres
Sure.
that flows this way. This is the Cimarron treatment area,
Yep.
and that's not identified actually as contributory because it's an infiltration area that should hold that amount of rain.
Right,
Mm.
well,
Yeah,
sometimes, yeah. It's another point of contention. Thank you, Mr. Tracy.
Thank you.
Councilmember Holtz.
I want to make sure I have things correct, Mr. First. On the recommended conditions that are in there, because there's mention of, and do things regarding Fifth Street. Are the recommendations based to include that Fifth Street would be modified with the escrow according to that? Or right now are the recommended findings to not allow that?
So presently, the recommendation is that Fifth Street be designed per the city's design standards, with the only exception being the alternative access. So the rub there with what you just heard from the developer would be that the stormwater swale, given the recommended condition, wouldn't be allowed in the public right-of-way, and that trail connection would need to be made now as opposed to later. That's
This-
under the current recommendation.
Does staff have concerns about having that because we do escrows often for turn signals and other things. Do you have concerns about that aspect and that the trail would be connected at a later point, potentially 1 year from now or 20 years from now, depending upon?
Yeah, so a few notes here, and, let others jump in on the city's team if they wish, but cash escrows can be a little bit tough sometimes, just because we don't necessarily always know exactly when the trail will be constructed, because it's kind of dependent on future development. In this proposed situation, whenever that future development occurs is when that stormwater swale gets moved and then the trail can be built. So there's kind of a chain of things that have to happen for this timing to work. And then relative to the actually escrowed amount, sometimes it can be hard to understand what is the scope of the work that we need that escrow to cover. So
So maybe calculating it might not be, we can make a calculation, but it might not be perfect.
the risk is that it might be wrong, and I think if it's wrong, it tends to be low as opposed to high.
Do we have concerns from an engineering standpoint as to, does that solution take care of the stormwater runoff from elsewhere? From that standpoint, does that solution,
So in concept, the solution is, it seems to work. However, what's problematic as per Mr. First is there's a lot of uncertainties and unknowns, right? One other thing to consider is this is a non-contiguous development. So by that I mean we have a gap in Fifth Street as is proposed here. So while the development brings utilities over across the pallet site next door, if that develops before the property to the north of Limerick Village, we could have a trail that comes up and just stops before it gets to the intersection. You know what I mean? There's just so many unknowns. That's why staff's recommendation is to move now, build the street now, build the trail connection now, and work on an alternative for to allow for the stormwater, whether that's maybe adjusting the alignment of Fifth Street. That could be a potential. Moving the swale to the north, that could be a potential. But staff's recommendation is to, there's a lot of risks associated with the escrow. There's a lot of risks associated with the timetable, a lot of unknowns. And our recommendation is to adhere to the Fifth Street standards with the construction and development of the property.
with a couple of those options that you offered as alternatives, would some of those require a city and a 429 because it is a separate property? You mentioned, realigning Fifth Street slightly. That's not
Right.
their property, and it's not our property.
So by that I mean if Fifth Street's alignment went south and the swale remained where it was, then you've got, this remnant piece that would maybe be an outlot or something like that, and that would allow for that drainage.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah.
You don't have any questions as an engineer?
I have many questions. My concern is, if we put the trail in now, what's their alternatives to handle the stormwater? Other than to move the road south, which would reduce their development size?
Councilman Dragisich, I just kind of went through it. This is an issue that's kind of come up here at the 11th hour.
Yeah,
You'll notice that, none of this information was submitted in the packet. It's all being presented now.
yeah.
So we're trying to react and work with the developer as
Okay.
best we can.
Okay.
So I don't have all great answers for you right now.
No, that's okay. I just didn't know if there'd been any other discussion about it.
And Nate's correct partially that it is an ongoing design process that we've been working with our consultants and the watershed requirements. The watershed's also very concerned about the flows getting off the contributory area to the north and into the ditch section without flooding anybody out. So again, working to solve all those various issues. Shifting the road south to fully provide that boulevard on the north side of Fifth Street and convey this flow would be very impactful to development. It also has some compounding effects to the intersection location. If the further we move that intersection south of Fifth Street and Manning Avenue, now we've got complexities on the east side of the road about access to parcels on the north and south side of that intersection. Because now you're pulling the intersection away from the property that you would access to the north. So it's kind of got this compounding effect. Again, we see this as it's a phased construction. I mean, in my previous career, we did a lot of phased construction. We built half roads. I think Fifth Street in the past and various developments within the city has been phased construction. I believe Nate mentioned they were contiguous developments, but I think we've also seen events where contiguous developments can be delayed for many years too, depending on the economy, for instance. So again, we think we've really came up with a reasonable solution. We worked diligently with the property owner to find a solution that works for them. We're willing to provide I called it a cash escrow, non-refundable cash escrow, a deposit for future improvements, whatever we need to call it. But we can guarantee that work gets done in the future. We're happy to present cost estimates and work with the city staff to verify and confirm our cost estimates are accurate for that future work. Our impression is that when the property does develop to the north, they could easily handle that bit of the Fifth Street construction, that North Boulevard. So, again, thank you, council.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
Question for staff. As you mentioned, part of this was maybe 11th hour, but I mean, it's a great deal of information, but it's a slightly important detail. Is there a worthwhile conversation for staff regarding that specific issue between now and August 5th, or is that, would it?
So I guess I can start, and, you know, Nate is welcome to jump in. So, should the council want to entertain a flexibility on the design standards specific, like what we've just discussed? For example, the stormwater comes to mind. That swale is a technical detail that the city's team has not had an opportunity to thoroughly review yet, just because it wasn't included in the project plans. It's been a work in progress, understandably. So I think, with that being said, should the council want to entertain that, I think staff would be looking for more time to understand, in particular, what the ramifications are to the swale itself. We understand the trail issue kind of well. It's, you know, putting off an element that would be needed if there's, you know, a demand for that trail. It's the stormwater swale that I think needs more technical evaluation. So with that being said, you know, going to the 5th, or even should the developer, you know, agree, beyond then, I think would be helpful from a staff evaluation standpoint. But beyond that, I'll look to Nate.
Yep, I agree with Mr. First's assessment here. If tabling the project for a meeting, that would greatly help us understand and potentially come back with a more collaborative solution.
I mean, is that enough? Is that enough time where it's not more insight, but more of a conclusion of, yes, a solution exists. No, not this one. Yes, like, is that enough time? Or from an engineering standpoint, is that like a months-long thing where then we have to have a conversation about a change of date? Or is that, would there be more insight that could be provided by before the August 5th deadline? Or is that too soon?
I think we'd have to turn around and review pretty quick. I mean, if you think about your packet publication requirements, we're you know, looking at maybe having to have something done by like end of next week already. So I think, you know, being realistic, if we're looking to table this, I mean, just you know, with the August 5th deadline, for, you know, forgetting that for a moment, we'd be looking more realistically at that second meeting in August if we're actually evaluating plans. But that's just my perspective, and again, I don't want to speak for the city engineer on that detail.
I was right about to say the same thing, you know. You know, going to the next meeting already, we're looking at having to have something figured out by next week, and having to work with the developers team and have their engineers working on it. You know, I don't know if that's going to be enough time.
And hypothetically, because this is preliminary plat, am I correct to presume it's not one of those things where, say, we move forward with it and said, we're not moving forward with this item, we want another month? Can't really do that with a preliminary plat because we're literally giving preliminary plat to the design.
So you can approve a preliminary plat conditionally. The challenge is, it's hard to recommend how you approve this given the technical nature of the request. So that's kind of the catch that we're in right now. If you were to, let's say, approve it conditionally this evening, I mean, staff would have a hard time telling you what the ramifications of that storm swale really are down the road.
Couldn't we could approve it with the conditions that the staff presented, that conversation could be had with the developer between now and when we see the final plat. And if it gets the understanding that that is gonna be needed, that could be presented to us at the final plat presentation.
So to play that out, I think there could be challenges with that approach, only because the city typically conditions acceptance of a final plat upon satisfying the requirements of the preliminary plat. And so if we require that they design plans according to our standards, I think we would be unable to accept the final plat. So I think that would be challenging.
Okay.
Councilmember Dragisich.
It seems that maybe the compromise solution, just thinking, and I'm half
Question?
crazy. It's a question, yes, it is a question.
All right.
The question is, couldn't you design a bridge over that swale for the trail? So the trail would go to Manning Avenue rather than, and that would solve the problem. That's my question, would that solve the problem? It wouldn't be a very tall bridge, not very heavy because it's pedestrian and bicycles.
Theoretically, a boardwalk could be constructed in that north boulevard, but then that raises safety issues with guardrails. I think it would also raise, with previous municipal experience, it would raise concerns about maintenance in the winter, plowing the trail, et cetera. Again, we've got everything's a bit of a design solution that you can't always do immediately. We are having conversations with the Screetons. The quite candidly, Maplewood Development would love to acquire their property and continue developing to the north. They've indicated that as they see development occurring to the south, maybe they'll be interested in that conversation. We've also had conversations with the property owners to the west, and I believe they've indicated they're not interested in doing anything at this time. Is it possible the western connection could happen before the Screeton property develops, as Nate mentioned? Perhaps. We think there's opportunity, though, that, again, the trail connection north to 10th Street does not even exist yet. And to my knowledge, that is not on a capital improvement plan for Washington County. So this could potentially be a 10-foot trail to nowhere for a number of years, going north in particular. So again, we think it's a very reasonable ask that we phase construction, especially since we're willing to provide the funds to do that in the future. And as the property to the north develops, that trail will be constructed.
So to confirm for staff, we're not aware of any discussions for the Fifth Street extension to the west.
We haven't seen any plans, and I'm not aware of any conversations to complete the Fifth Street connection to the west of the
That
trail.
entity has never come forward with anything as of recent.
I've not seen or heard anything.
So right now, to that point, we're talking about a trail that goes from Manning to nowhere.
Well, yeah, I suppose the counter argument is you gotta start somewhere.
So my wife says when it comes project time, get it started. And then I don't.
The counterpoint, Councilmember Holtz, is, there's been discussion about what happens first. And if it's a trail to nowhere initially, it is what it is. A lot of developments that happen this way are, but if things start happening around it, except for where our gap is within the development, then it is really a trail to nowhere. So that's what I'm trying to stress here is the uncertainty of development. It's driven by the market, it's driven by all sorts of factors. So we're just trying to really minimize the liability for the city in the future here and minimize our potential costs in the future.
I'm still waiting on a motion. For discussion. I don't, yeah, I can't discuss. I don't really have any more questions.
Move to adopt ordinance 2026-10, rezoning the property and creating PUD standards for Limerick Village as requested by Maplewood Development on the subject property.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
Now for the fun part.
So, can there be a compromise struck here? And I don't know that we typically do this, so this might be a little bit out of the box, right? So just bear with me. That we, if we do approve with conditions made by staff, but as that continues, since this did come up, kind of later, and we're trying to make sure that we can take care of the, accommodate the traffic movements of the neighboring property, that we allow staff to work with the developer and decide if it's a reasonableness that it can't be put in at this point. And if not, then an escrow is okay, and determine what that escrow amount be. In other words, can we, I would feel comfortable, since we don't really have the answer now. There's great engineering minds out there that can do a lot of things, but when you're trying to scrabble something together and you don't have it, maybe giving them some time to look at this, and maybe it's not able to move the water, make a hole, dig some deeper culverts, whatever, that you can't build around it, maybe you can. I'm wondering if we as a council are comfortable, I'll just say I am, saying let staff work with the developer to come up with what's reasonable. If it's not attainable, then what is the appropriate escrow to take care of the trail at a later date?
Is that different than what I was asking about? Essentially the same thing, where we approve it as presented, and then if there isn't a better solution, and I thought the answer I was given was, we cannot make those changes between the
Well, that would be,
preliminary and final.
well, that's a preliminary, but we're not asking that we make the approval on that. I'm asking that staff, during the course of that, we say, okay, here's the preliminary plat in general good. And by the way, when we talk about some variances, related to, lot size and, spacing. In a PUD, you're typically looking for something for value gain for the city. Two large things, I think the value gain for the city is realignment of Hudson Road that the developer will be doing, and, a large portion of Fifth Street that will be constructed as a part of this in the city streets. So for me, the variances requested, we're getting a value gained on the developer here, but I guess then my point is to try and get beyond the stop point and trying to come up with an answer by next Wednesday so it can be in the August 5th packet. They say, here's the condition that city staff work with the developer to come up and, ultimately make that decision that this is the most reasonable outcome. Here's the escrow to do it in the future, or here's an alternative engineering outcome that would accommodate the full width of Fifth Street.
I agree with that analysis, Mayor. I think we have a short timeline, and second, I know we talk about trails to nowhere, but I can tell you, there's a lot of trails to nowhere in Lake County. I live in a development with trails that go to nowhere
Yeah.
consistently. And while we don't like it, and our goal is to get connected up, I think having staff work with them to come up with the best possible solution that we can, and maybe as you put your collective minds and high intelligence together, you'll find a solution that gets the trail in and gets the water handled. I don't know, but I'm comfortable with that proposal as well.
Yeah, so,
That's what I was aiming for
Okay.
in my comment, and so if
Yeah.
that's the way to go about it, I think that's a great compromise.
That's-
Yeah, I think it's
So to
great.
confirm, what you're saying is that by the time it gets to the August 5th packet in the consent
It won't be
agenda,
the August 5th packet. We don't have time for August 5th packet, Jeff.
You literally just said August 5th.
No, they don't have, they
Oh.
got like a week. Cause then the packet goes out on Thursday. So what I'm saying is, we approve the preliminary concept plan with conditions of approval. In the specifics of the Fifth Street standards, let's have staff work with the developer to determine if that's not attainable without changing major alignments for Fifth Street for reasons that have been stated previously, or if there's an appropriate escrow for that.
Just clarification, just with the engineering comments, they believe a solution is to, realign it and move it south as an option. So
Yeah.
what I'm hearing is not to do that
Well,
as an option.
I think there's more alternatives than just one realignment, but that's me. And if the realignment's not acceptable, because, let's be honest, units have to be put in if you're gonna make it marketable, as a developer, to pay for the streets and the infrastructure that they're putting in for North Hudson Boulevard, all of those items, then maybe it comes out that it's an escrow, and then, engineering staff, planning staff can determine what that value is. I'll just ask Mr. Stanley, is that something that could be worked through with,
Yes,
I don't wanna ask something that's not appropriate, I guess.
there's a number of options, we're just trying to stress our importance that, we minimize the potential for our own future issues as, the city of Lake Elmo, and, the way to do that is to just build it per standard right now, But if we're being directed to go this route, I'm sure we'll do our best to come up with a solution.
Maybe just to be clear, I don't know if that's necessarily the route you're directing them to go.
No.
We're approving what the staff recommended.
Right.
And we're just asking for them to have that conversation, and then if it determine, you determine, hey, what we told council on July 21st was the correct thing, then, I guess that's what we are approving right now.
And are we putting a timeline on that discussion as well? Of like, we need an answer by,
It would have to be done by final plat.
which is,
I don't know.
Typically, the requirement is 180 days following the approval of the preliminary.
Mario's
plat.
shaking his head.
no. Listen, we have to get a grading permit, and I can't rely on, I'm really uncomfortable, frankly, working with your consulting engineer to try to solve this after the fact.
Okay.
We have to get a grading permit, we gotta be able to rely on the idea that we're gonna get this done.
Okay.
And frankly, we've got a lot of problems that are hinged on one small thing, which is leaving a section of the trail out.
Yeah.
I think, I keep hearing that, there's a protection of the city and its financial interests, and I understand that completely. I deal with a lot of cities. But I think the benefit that we provided in this scenario far exceeds the section of trail that will have to be done in the future. And remember, there's sort of a stopgap to this. It's not just about our escrow, but if the Screetons ever decide to develop or sell to a developer, that developer is gonna have to do it too. So you have sort of a fail-safe kind of situation where it's gonna get covered in one direction or another. That's not gonna fall on the city. A couple of other points I just wanna make, that got lost in the shuffle here. We talked about stormwater management. This is a large floodplain area that has contributed to this area that we're gonna solve once and for all with the construction of this ponding area and with the culvert that leads into the ditch that'll take this water down through the Valley Branch area. Keep in mind that one of the reasons you're not seeing trees on that trail, as was brought up by Mr. Holtz before, is that there's not only the ditch that has to be maintained, but there's a trail section there that the county is also mandating, and we would love to put trees on there, but the problem is there's just not enough room within that area that we can see right now. So that was that issue. To the west, to that point, we have the easement from that property owner. So that connection is being made with his consent and with the easement that he signed up, but it's just the water connection right now, because that's what we need. He's just not ready to sell right now, but that certainly is a big step in that direction of the development of the site for him as well. So just to clarify a few of those points, sorry to belabor that, but I just wanted to make sure it was clear.
Other discussion?
I mean, does that change your thought process on it? I mean, I think it's a valid point, and
Well, I think there's value gained here, and I see staff's position wanting to protect the city. Ultimately, I guess I was trying to come up with something that could be worked through. Any fix to that I look at just creates deep culverts and probably pump stations and things of that nature that are costs that probably don't need to be attributed to an issue like this, in my opinion. I'd like to hear what others have to think. Or I can call the question.
I mean, in looking back at December of 2024, so that was 682 units, this is 647. So it has gone down by 35. I greatly appreciate that, obviously, you have been having conversations with the Screeton family. Those conversations matter. Make sure you are doing things right and making sure that they are a partner as their property matters. So that's fantastic. I agree with the mayor in that for a PUD, we denied a PUD a couple years ago because there wasn't value gain to the city. There was nothing. It was just housing units with no park, with no change in infrastructure. There was no value gained. And we said, no, that's not happening. Here, I would agree, relining Hudson is a tremendous value because it makes that commercial property a lot more usable on the corner with Manning and 94. Getting Fifth Street done helps. On the flip side, we could just 429 it ourselves and get Fifth Street done. So we could, but we haven't had that conversation. It's not a process we've really started, but relining Hudson definitely is a value gain. I do understand in terms of the density, it is a math game. With the medium density, yes, it's a lot closer to the lot size than it is with the high density, but it also might be that sometimes a square peg in a round hole doesn't fit. They're meeting our requirements for density as mandated by the Met Council. So it's not the first time where maybe lot size has needed some exceptions. Mr. Screeton, I feel like.
Am I
Thoughts?
too late on the comment period? Can I
I would be
talk?
curious to hear from Mr. Screeton as his property is impacted. Do you concur with the feedback that's been provided that you are a willing partner in this that you are fully on board with the solution?
Oh, we'd like to talk about that. Warren Tracy has worked on this very hard and done some very good work. We have a map up there. Can I tell you where we're at on the map? The access on Fifth Street is a right in and right out if we're going along with it. There's 120 feet of Fifth Street that's gonna be designed as a 10-ton road, but we need guarantees that it'll be maintained as a 10-ton road. It isn't posted as a 5-ton road, isn't posted as a 7-ton road. I don't know how to do it. I think it can be figured out very simply. I don't think that's a big deal. The other issue we have is as the Fifth Street stoplight gets moved to the south, the access to our eastern parcel is lost. I think it's something that can be worked out, but still has to be worked out. It's not an issue for Lake Elmo, but as you move the stoplight, West Lakeland and Washington County have to figure out our access that was agreed upon in 1986, is our access is maintained. So that's an issue that has to be worked on. And that's where we're at. They've done a tremendous job, but there's issues to be finished.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
10-ton road, that sounds like an important detail.
That's not that difficult to work around.
I'm not an engineer.
It's the pavement section of the road, so
Pavement
it's-
section is
it's-
subgrade.
Yeah.
Yes, Councilmember Dragisich.
Mayor, in listening to the discussion, I come to, in my mind, are we willing to kill this development for 100 feet of trail that would be built in the future? I mean, that's kind of what it really comes down to. If there's a solution that could be found, great, but at this point, it seems like the solutions are fairly evasive or very expensive. I heard you mention pump station, which came to my mind too, but I mean, that's ongoing maintenance, it's additional cost, and so we don't know when the property to the north will develop. It could be 5 years, it could be 10 years, but looking at the benefit we get that we've all talked about from this development, are we willing to walk away for 100 feet of trail?
Do you have an amendment?
Well, I'm trying to think of what the correct wording would be.
Mayor, members of the council, I would just note that the PUD ordinance is currently the motion, as I understand it, getting nods from the city attorney, that's good. So, the conditions of the resolution approving the preliminary plat are what you would need to be careful of amending and not necessarily the PUD ordinance, which is granting the flexibilities they've requested.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
members of the council, I think, right now you are talking about the PUD ordinance. I don't know if you want to retract that
Sure.
and then move to the resolution approving the preliminary plat and then do the PUD ordinance after that to make sure that goes through. But with respect to the PUD and the preliminary plat, I think you have three options. You can approve it with the conditions that are recommended by staff, and that would mean that they would have to maintain the Fifth Street design standards, which I don't think they're in agreement with, but, you could impose that condition. Otherwise, you could approve but change the Fifth Street design condition to require that they post an escrow. As to how specific you want to get on that, I guess that's up to you. And then I guess the third option would be, I know this next meeting is going to be a tight timeline. You can ask the developer if they'd be willing to agree to an extension to the second meeting in August. They don't have to agree to that, but you can certainly ask.
So to confirm, the 100 feet of bituminous is regarding the second motion, not the first motion.
Correct.
Right, so, all right. So maybe I jumped the gun on the motion and solution thing to the wrong one. My bad. All right. So regarding the ordinance for 2026 rezoning the property and creating PUD standards for Limerick Village as requested by Maplewood Development on the subject property. So again, so if we get back to the requests to do the PUD with some of the conditions, I would say that the city gets value gained for some of the things that they're asking in there as far as lot widths, distance to buildings, those natures. So I'm on board with that.
I'm on board with it as well. Obviously, when this came up in the past, wasn't on board with it, and we've moved in the right direction. I think we're as far as we can go with this, based off of the requirements that we're working with between Met Council and the city of Lake Elmo.
Yeah, I'm on board with it as well. I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but I agree with Councilman Dragisich as well. I think killing this deal over 100 feet of bituminous trail is not wise. I think the benefits of Limerick Village, especially with it being, a little bit outside of the downtown, it's just, I feel like this is just going to be a great addition to Lake Elmo, so I'm on board with anything that gets us moving forward.
All right, I'm gonna call a question on this. Move to adopt ordinance, the motion is to adopt ordinance 2026-10. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Ordinance 2026-10 is adopted.
Move
by
to,
an affirmative vote.
so this first, move to adopt resolution 2026-053, approving the preliminary plat and PUD for Limerick Village as requested by Maplewood Development on the subject property based on the findings of fact and conditions therein.
Second?
Friendly amendment request.
Move for a friendly amendment that would exclude the portion of the trail along Fifth Street, is it Fifth Street or Fifth Avenue?
Fifth Street.
Fifth Street, where the drainage swale would be constructed and that appropriate escrow be established.
Is that specific enough, council?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I think it is. I mean, I don't know if we even know how much escrow we would need.
The recommendation would be, I guess, regarding the escrow to have city staff review and
Yes.
substantiate the scope of the
Yeah.
work informing the
Yes.
escrow.
Okay, second.
Accept the friendly amendment?
Yep.
Okay. We've discussed this, so I don't really want to go through all that again, unless somebody really has something to speak on it that we haven't said. So I'm going to call the question. Move to adopt resolution 2026-053, approving the preliminary plat and PUD for Limerick Village as requested by Maplewood Development on the subject property based on the findings of fact and conditions therein, with the exception of the section of Fifth Street that unable trail in which the developer will give the city an escrow in the amount as determined with the city staff to substantiate that value. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Hearing none, resolution 2026-053 passes.
Move to adopt resolution 2026-054, approving the summary publication of ordinance 2026-10.
Support.
Not gonna have any discussion on this, pretty simple, we all know the deal on this, so all those in favor of the motion for resolution 2026-054, approving the summary publication of ordinance 2026-10, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Resolution 2026-054 passes. Thank you very much, gentlemen. All right, wow. Item number 3, Raftellus Organizational Assessment Implementation Update. Mr. Tholen.
No one wants to hear Mr. Tholen? What the heck?
They're all leaving, dude.
You stand up and everyone left.
All right. Good evening, Mayor, council members. At the September 2nd, 2025 City Council meeting, the Raftellus Public Works Organizational Assessment was presented. The assessment identified several opportunities to improve the efficiency, organization, and long-term operations of the Public Works Department. It's now been almost 10 months since the presentation was It's been almost 10 months since the presentation. Tonight's update is intended to provide the council with an overview of the progress made in implementing those recommendations. Staff will highlight the changes that have been completed and those that are underway and initiatives that remain in progress as we continue to strengthen the department, preparing for the future growth. This presentation is intended to demonstrate the department's commitment to continue to improve and keep the council informed in implementation of the assessment's recommendations. Overview here, we have the update on the 12 reports that were recommended by Raftellus. First recommendation is create an annual work plan to determine when significant work initiatives are scheduled or expected. The annual report plan was created in the fall of 2025. This plan was reviewed with staff and its public works monitor in the main meeting room. which would be the lunchroom. Recommendation 2, use of annual work plan to revisit policies restricting operator PTO. Procedures around the PTO restrictions have been changed, allowing more lenient use of accrued time while still maintaining the service levels to residents. Number 3 recommendation, modify department summer hours to increase efficiency. During the November Labor Management Committee meeting, the public works hours were agreed to be changed to the following. Starting with the first full pay period in April and ending in the first full pay period in October, summer hours will be Monday through Thursday, 6:30 a.m. to 4 p.m., and Friday, 6:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. Outside of that time frame, the hours are Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. The fourth recommendation was increase staffing by 1 operator and 1 lead operator in 2025, and additional staff member in 2026. Due to the former Public Works Director exiting in 2025, no positions were added in 2025, but we did recruit for an operator in January 2026. Staff evaluated the needs of the department and will move forward with 2 leads, 1 for utility operations and the other for streets parks operations. Those 2 job descriptions are on the agenda for this evening next. Once the leads are established, we'll determine the additional staff members in 2026. Recommendation 5, designate about 6 operators as utility specialists and limit on-call rotations to utility specialists. Because we're a smaller department and have trouble with staff picking up open on-call shifts, we have determined to keep all staff, regardless if they will be assigned in the streets, parks, or utilities team, on an on-call rotation at this time. We'll evaluate this in the future. Recommendation 6, edit the Public Works Director's job description, remove responsibilities for heavy equipment operation, and add focus on public works outreach and achieving strategic goals. These changes are made to the job description prior to the posting in November of 2025. Recommendation 7, hire an administrative assistant to help with administrative needs. Our administrative assistant, Public Works, Fire was hired in December and has made a great impact to the administrative needs of the department. Recommendation 8, reevaluate fleet maintenance with the city and eliminate auto repair responsibilities for employees who are not certified. So what we've done is routine maintenance is performed in-house while major vehicle and equipment repairs are contracted out. As the city fleet grows, adding a fleet maintenance manager and or ASE certified mechanic may improve efficiencies and reduce outsourcing costs. When I say routine maintenance, I'm talking like oil changes and stuff like that, the minimal stuff. Recommendation 9, stakeholders within the city should collaborate on potential park staffing. Council met a workshop on June 9th of this year and determined that the new position would be postponed at this time. City staff is evaluating current staff capabilities to see how to help with immediate needs. Recommendation number 10, implement Beehive CMM to fully utilize capabilities. Beehive software continues to be used for entering and tracking work orders. As of the second week in July, the system transitioned from an app-based platform to a web-based platform, making it more user-friendly. This change will allow staff to receive and manage work orders on tablets while working out in the field. Once the system is fully implemented and operational, staff will receive training on all of its capabilities to maximize the effectiveness. Recommendation 11, obtain leadership training for those in supervisory roles. The new park, street lead, and utility lead will have the opportunity to participate in leadership training to help them succeed in their new supervisory role. In addition to the Assistant Public Works Director and the Public Works Director will continue to participate in ongoing leadership, professional development training to enhance their supervisory, management, and work leadership skills within the Public Works Department. Recommendation number 12, work to install and sustain a culture of safety. Safety equipment and supplies have been readily stocked and available to staff. Staff has been encouraged to bring safety concerns forward, and Public Works leaders has communicated the expectation of safety and follow protocols. Action reports are discussed as learning opportunities to prevent future incidents. Final slide I have here is department statistics. So this is presented in the Raptels report. It went out to 2023. I've added out to 2024, 2025 in there. If I can share with you from the time from 2023 to 2025 for the sewer pipe, we went to 44.1 miles, which is a 10.25% increase from 2023. For the sewer customers connections, we went to 2,723 for 2025, which was a 5.11% increase from 2023. Water pipe, water main, 2025 we're at 94.6 miles water pipe, 5.11% increase from 2023. Water customers, for 2025, we have 3,774 connections, an 8.88% increase. Acres of park, we have 555.9 acres of park, which is a 5.68% increase in 2023. Paved roads, for 2025, we have 100.3 miles of paved roads, increase from 2023 at 3.40%. And then for population, there is a typo here. So for 2025, it should be 15,280, a 13.07% increase from 2023. So, do I have any questions, or try to answer any questions?
Did we turn back some roads in 2019, or did it drop from 112 to 92? Anybody else see that?
Oh, yeah.
I see that. I believe, just my recollection was, our previous public works director talking about maybe it was the way they were calculated or the software or something.
Oh. There's something off there?
Yeah, something off.
Okay.
We
Thank
did
you.
not get rid of
I always
those.
thought it, I knew in the early 2020s that it was in that 95, 99 range. I didn't know that it was higher previous to that. I don't think we had turned any roads back to gravel, so.
Unless you really want to.
No, no, not necessarily. I don't think the residents would really appreciate that extra expenditure.
So I don't have a question, just a comment. I appreciate the update on, these 12 items that were suggested from the report. Maybe just my one suggestion would, if there's, and again, I don't know what it would be or how it would be possible, but if we could correlate these somehow to the quality of service. And again, I'm just gonna use an example, and I think it's much easier for the fire department to come up with these metrics, right? But they give us the metric of, the average call time, time from call to getting on site. And that's something that's really, I feel like, tangible for the residents to say, okay, wow, like, this increase in funds that we're spending on the fire department is resulting in this type of service increase. And I don't know what that would be for Public Works directly, but I guess I just would challenge you as maybe if that's something you can think about as far as you continue to work on implementing these changes that were suggested, how is that impacting the quality of services that are delivered to our residents? So just a suggestion to think about.
Beehive task orders, do you get those sometimes, and does the administrative help correlate any of that are maybe resident generated or things that come about that you guys tend to that maybe wasn't on your your daily task or your monthly task things? Maybe that's something that could be tracked as far as responsiveness to.
I think the responsive is a huge.
Just an idea. Just throw it out there.
So right now, everything is entered in Beehive for Angie takes calls if what it could be, and enters that Beehive. Same with staff, if I take a call or
There
something
might be
like that.
some report in Beehive you could get out of that, I would imagine.
For like how many calls or complaints in certain areas are
Or
referred to?
what
say
you,
like-
what Public Works addressed for call-ins or something, I'm just trying to be helpful, think of things like that.
And I guess
Yeah.
I'll just make the point too, like, I'm not looking for an answer tonight by
Yeah.
any means. It's more of just a, hey, you know, something to think about over the next quarter. You know, is there a metric? Like another example, so I had to have an inspection done. And I thought it was excellent service in the fact that I was able to get that inspection done within a certain time frame, right? So, you know, speed to being able to, from call to getting the inspection done. I think that's, again, something that residents can really resonate with. And so I don't want to put you on, I'm not trying to put you on the spot here to tell us like what it could be. It was just a observation of something to maybe think about.
Sure, so some of that stuff on our dashboard is put into that, all that information comes off of Beehive. Like how many total work orders are out there, how many are completed, and what areas they were for. So
Sure.
there's that information, it's part of our dashboard.
Okay.
And yeah, maybe that could be the route it goes, but.
One thing on the safety, culture thing, do you guys, you have a weekly or a Monday morning team get together to talk about the upcoming week's work or something like that? Do you guys have like a safety topic of the week or something like that? Like just address tick bites or address, lightning concerns or address, construction site work or anything like that?
In our weekly, or I should say our morning meetings, we don't specifically call it out, but when I assign tasks or staff is told tasks, we remind them, safety, PPE, what's required. Okay, what are you doing? Make sure you have this, this, and that, to make sure that we are following what should be done
Yeah.
with staff. There's nothing forgot about. We have our, like I said, we have our monthly meetings that we go over stuff, but
Okay, it was just, I've been in several instances where it's pretty programmatic that each Monday or each the weekly meeting, whatever it was, there was a safety topic addressed specifically for whether it's heat stress, heat stroke, just to highlight some of the stuff that, it might not be just project specific, but overall safety and development for the crew.
topic of the week.
Could be something like that, safety topic of the week. Just a suggestion.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions, items for Mr. Tholen? I appreciate the update.
I was just gonna say thank you for that. It's amazing to see the progress that's occurred in that short amount of time. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
All right, let's move on to Public Works Lead job descriptions with Administrative Service Director, Ms. Doyle.
Been a change in plans, it's gonna be me.
Oh, is it? Wait a minute, is she shirking her responsibilities?
No, usually we put these on the consent agenda, but because he was doing the Raftellus study, we thought we would just have him follow up
All
on
right,
what those were too.
go for it.
All right. I have no presentation for this, so, mayor and council members, as part of our Raftellus organizational assessment, one of the recommendations was to add an additional lead position within the Public Works Department. Staff has reviewed the recommendation, reviewed how the department is currently operating and where additional supervisory support is needed. Within the continued growth of the Public Works Department, staff is proposing to divide operations in two preliminary focused areas: utilities and street and parks. To support those operations, staff has developed a job description for Public Works Utility and Public Works Street and Parks Lead. These are included in your packets. These positions would provide a day-to-day operational leadership by helping assign work, answer staff questions, coordinate activities, and oversee the quality and efficiency of work being performed in the field. Both positions are already included in the 2026 budget, so there are no additional fiscal impacts beyond what's already been planned. The council has 4 options tonight. First option, approve both job descriptions and authorize staff to post the positions. Second option, approve only the streets parks lead position. Third option, approve only the utility lead position. Fourth option, do not approve either position. Staff's recommendation is to approve both the Public Works Streets Parks lead and the Public Works Utility lead job descriptions and authorize staff to move forward with the posting of the positions. Proposed motion is to approve and post the Public Works Streets Parks lead and the Public Works Utility lead descriptions.
I would move to approve and post the Public Works Street
What-
Parks lead.
do you have
and Public Works
questions?
lead job.
Questions?
Yeah.
We don't think we have a motion yet.
He's making it.
Or you're making a
Making a
motion?
motion.
You had no questions?
No, I read the
That's
packet.
unlike you.
I read the packet very carefully.
All right. I'm
Made the motion.
Sorry to interrupt you,
I
sir.
made the motion.
All right. We have a second.
A second.
Any discussion?
Yes, as I anxious to make the motion, I read very carefully the Raftellus report. I've looked at all the information we had to date. I'm convinced that we need more staff in Public Works. The metrics say that. And so I fully support adding these positions.
I absolutely agree 100%.
Thank you.
Agree.
All right. All right, all those in favor of the motion to approve and post Public Works Streets Parks lead and Public Works Utility lead job description, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much, Mr. Tholen.
Thank you.
Next, we have Social Host Ordinance. Sergeant Ty Jacobson presenting.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. I'm here tonight to present on a proposed ordinance 13.00.040, social hosts, which you should have a copy of. And before I start, I just want to thank the city attorney for helping prepare that ordinance for you guys. A social host ordinance prohibits private residents or social hosts from knowingly providing or allowing alcohol consumption by individuals under 21 on premises under their control, including homes, other private property, and public spaces like parks. The ordinance applies whether or not the host is present, as long as they know or knew or reasonably should have known that the underage consumption was occurring and failed to take reasonable steps to prevent it. The primary goal of a social host ordinance is to reduce underage access to alcohol, prevent related harms such as alcohol poisoning, traffic accidents, and risky behaviors, and holds hosts accountable for failing to supervise or prevent underage use. Looking at the Minnesota Department of Health website, as of 2021, there's 147 cities in the state that currently have a social host ordinance in 37 counties. Here in Washington County, there are 5 cities that currently have it: Cottage Grove, Forest Lake, Oak Park Heights, Stillwater, and Woodbury. With that, I can answer any questions you guys might have about the ordinance.
Councilmember Holtz.
Do all the cities have the exact same template? Or do they, because I was looking it up like this, but is it literally word for word the exact same for all the cities?
I didn't, like statewide or the ones in Washington County?
Cottage Grove or Oak Park?
They can vary. Some, like ours, like the proposed ordinance here pertains to alcohol. There are ordinances across the state. I didn't look at each one of those cities, but some do include cannabis. But ours specifically is just related to alcohol.
Gotcha, thank you. Question for council. On the prohibited acts, and I want to make sure I'm reading this right, that's one of the prohibited acts would be that they reasonably should know that an underage person will consume alcohol. So now we're getting to mens rea. How would to apply that, how would that be applied? How does a person reasonably know that the underage person will consume alcohol?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I think it's kind of about if you know your kids And, you know that they, if you leave them alone with a bunch of alcohol, that they might consume it. And, if they have a tendency to take risks or whatnot, and you let them alone with a lot of alcohol and don't, hide it from them, then it's possibly that they might consume that while you're gone.
Well, you're saying might, but the language says you know they will.
Should know that they will.
That they
yeah.
reasonably should know that they will consume alcohol.
And Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'm not a prosecutor. So I don't prosecute the social host ordinance. And I think this is pretty typical language that's in all of them. I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty consistent, the language from all the ordinances I was reading. With any state statute or city ordinance, when we are gonna decide whether or not we're gonna issue a citation for that, we have to look at the totality of everything and all the evidence that we have to be able to prove what we are charging somebody with. So we can't just ambiguously just issue a citation. We have to have facts and evidence that can prove what we're charging.
Gotcha. And because when I was again, fully support it. It's a brilliant thing. I'm surprised. I wish we had this earlier. I was looking up for Sherburne County, like they had something, and they have an exception that says, look, they're not going to be charged if they took steps to prevent it once they realize it's occurring. So in other words, they reasonably should have known it happened, but they're not going to get charged if they still took steps after the fact. Does our proposed language have something along those lines?
I didn't see it.
I don't recall that being specifically in our ordinance, but when we're enforcing state statute or ordinances, it's at the discretion of the officer that's on scene, whether or not they're going to issue a citation or not. So when you have discretion and something like that is occurring, that would be up to the officer, and that'd be us to train our deputies that you gotta take that stuff into account. It's not black and white all the time.
And because a misdemeanor is a criminal penalty, so this would be, neighbor calls on the other neighbor, law enforcement comes out, you make the call, you're reviewing the evidence, you're doing your interviews. A misdemeanor, they would be arrested, or they would be issued a misdemeanor
A citation.
citation. Okay. And there's no, because misdemeanors usually can have a fine as well.
Misdemeanors are 90 days in jail or $1,000 fine, but that's determined through the court system what that actual final penalty would be. That's not, us as law enforcement don't decide that.
Thank you.
Councilmember Dragisich.
I share some of your concerns, Councilor Holst, because many homes have alcohol. And so the parents go out to dinner and the kids go and, take the alcohol and consume it, and all of a sudden they're guilty of, a prohibited act and charged. Short of locking it up in a safe and hiding the key, I don't know how you get around that first prohibited act.
I think what the goal of this ordinance isn't to go out and cite a homeowner because their kid got into the liquor cabinet while they left. This is for people that are hosting social events.
Right.
Where they know
100%.
underage consumption is taking place.
Okay,
And that's
thank
what we're trying to avoid. We're trying to avoid the underage drinking parties where someone is providing a venue and they know or should have known that is taking place. That's
Okay,
what we're trying
thank
to
you for that clarification. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And I assume that's why using the definition of event or gathering, getting that 3-person threshold, that's the lever.
Correct.
All right.
Recommend approval of the proposed ordinance 2026-09.
Support.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I was just gonna say, I think, I guess it's good to have that discussion. I think the main point, like you said, is for the situation where the parents are at the house and allowing this to go on knowingly. Or I guess, they write a letter and leave the letter saying, hey, here's the alcohol, and you guys find that, right? It's just leaving it open for if there's obviously something, some sort of gross negligence that the parents can be held accountable, but yeah, this makes sense and I'm fine with it. I'm not too concerned about what is it called? The prohibited acts, I guess.
All right.
Was brought up.
Gonna call a question. All those in favor of the proposed ordinance 2026-09, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Proposed ordinance is approved. Thank you,
Thank you.
Sergeant Jacobson. Item number 6, authorize feasibility report and geotechnical services for the 2027 collector road improvements. Oofda.
Mayor and Council, before you tonight with an item to authorize a feasibility report for a project that we're calling the 2027 Collector Road Improvements. So the segment of roadway is actually 3 different streets, kind of S's from Jane Road North up to Keats Avenue, 45th Street into Julep Avenue North into 47th Street. I've kind of got this area highlighted with that orange line. So the pavement condition is, it's fair to poor. I have an error on my slide here, I apologize. During the last rating in 2025, the streets came back. Green is fair and the orange-yellow color is poor condition. I'm gonna talk a little bit more about this here as we go on, but we don't anticipate full reconstruction would be necessary as noted on this slide. I anticipate it would be a reclaim, even possibly a mill and overlay, but I'll talk about why I think it's gonna be a reclaim a little bit more as we go on. So we are soliciting a geotechnical report. We need that to verify what sort of improvement will be necessary for this stretch of road. There is some existing concrete gutter along the roadway. Just if you're familiar with this, it's more towards Lake Jane. There's maybe a couple few hundred feet of concrete curb and gutter. That'll be evaluated, and if it needs to be replaced, we'll include that in the project. The street geometrics and widths it's pretty consistent. It's if you've driven this area, it's a rural area surrounded by agricultural land. So I anticipate that should likely be maintained. There is ditches on both sides of the road. There's really one storm line that goes under it as a culvert. All the other culverts out there are private driveway culverts. But nonetheless, we will be evaluating drainage in the corridor, and if improvements need to be made with the project, we'll do so. The areas outside of the MUSA, there is no sanitary sewer, nor is there any proposed to be extended. There is a city trunk water main line that runs through this area, generally on either the south side of the road or the east side of the road as it S's. So today is July 21st, 2026, and I'm for you, asking for authorization for a feasibility study. If so authorized, I plan to come back in September and present the feasibility study, and then come back in October for ordering the improvements. That would allow us to develop plans over the winter and have an early bid date if council decides to move forward with this project. In the CIP, we have $1.1 million in funding currently budgeted. There is no, as you'll note here, there is no special assessment funding called out in the CIP at the moment, nor is there any stormwater fund dollars called out. But projects like this typically are assessed, and as part of the development of the feasibility report, we'll be developing a preliminary assessment role, and due to the nature of the area, this is a little different than our standard residential street project, so we'll be working with community development staff to help determine what those assessments are. But as presented tonight, I'm asking for you to approve a task order in the amount of $24,548 for preparation of the feasibility report, and also authorizing the administrator to sign an agreement not to exceed $20,000 for geotechnical services. So the total preliminary design fiscal impact we're talking is just under $45,000. I think I just said this, but I'll say it again. So the recommended motion tonight is council's asked to consider approving a resolution ordering preparation of feasibility report for the 2027 Collector Road improvements, and council is asked to authorize the city administrator to sign an agreement in the not to exceed amount of $20,000 for geotechnical services.
Do you know, Nate,
Yeah.
is this collector part of our MSAS system or no? Is it eligible?
I guess off the top of my head, Mr. Mayor, I don't have that answer for you. I did not check that. I would, I'll have to get back to you on that.
Yeah, I don't know if we've used our allotment of state aid funds elsewhere, but would be something I'd like that to be looked at.
I think we've scheduled, if you, in the CIP, if I'm remembering right, we have kind of earmarked a lot of it for future projects on like Hudson Boulevard. But certainly I'll look into that.
All right.
One thing I mentioned at the front end of my presentation, I talked about the pavement conditions out there. And typically when I'm in front of you asking to advance on a reclaim project, you see a lot of red, and now today you're seeing more yellow and green. And what's going on is these streets were, when we were looking into this and scoping it out, because this project has been in, I've only been your city engineer for a little over a year and a half, but this project has been in the CIP since I've been the city engineer. So I'm assuming it's been vetted out. But when we're doing the research, the streets were originally constructed in 1984, all right? So right now they're 42 years old. They have had some maintenance. They did have an overlay in 2005, which tracks with, sound pavement maintenance, about 20 years, 15 to 20 years, you want to do an overlay or mill an overlay. And then there's been some seal coats and crack seals along the way, but why I think it's, obviously the geotechnical investigation will inform the improvement, but when streets get to be that age, the asphalt just starts wearing out, if there's any original asphalt left. So, when I think about a mill and overlay, if we grind off the top couple inches like may have been done before, we're left with asphalt that we've seen in recent reclaim projects, that asphalt that's 30 years old plus below, it's not that stable, it's been stripping, or it's just denatured to the point that it's become very brittle. So that's why I've been using the word reclaim up here a lot for the rehabilitation, which is just, essentially replacement of the pavement section in this case. But I just wanted to provide a little context for the improvement scenario I've been discussing.
Since this kind of gets into my realm of area, are you looking at recommending like a ground penetrating radar to see what your subgrade is and the thickness of asphalt that there's currently?
Yep, GPR, corings, yep.
Coring's can hit a spot, but you'll get the full depth for the whole alignment with a GPR.
Absolutely, yep.
Okay.
I was gonna ask that.
Were you?
Yeah.
Glad.
I was gonna ask a little bit more technical terms, but
I can talk to you guys about it over a beer later if you'd like. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve Resolution 2026-051, ordering preparation of feasibility report for the 2027 Collector Road improvements.
Support.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, I'll ask a question. All those in favor of ordering a preparation of feasibility report for the 2027 Collector Road improvements, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Motion to authorize the city administrator the authority to sign a geotechnical services agreement in the amount of not to exceed $20,000.
second.
We have a motion and a second for authorizing city administrator to sign an agreement not to exceed in the amount of $20,000 for geotechnical services. I'm just gonna call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It's approved as well. Thank you, Mr. Stanley.
Thank you.
All right, second quarter 2026 updates.
Mr. Mayor and Council, as always, it's my pleasure to provide an update on staff's progress towards the goals that were provided in the strategic plan. It's hard to believe that there's less than 6 months left on this report, and then we'll be creating a new one. So, our community engagement survey for the 180 acres did end earlier this month, and staff received 404 comments. Currently, community development is organizing all the community feedback, and they'll be bringing that back to council in September. The RFPs for the 77-acre sports complex, we did receive those back, and staff is scoring them, and will be bringing their recommendation for the finalists to a Parks Commission, and then Parks Commission will be able to weigh in and then provide a recommendation to you. So that will be coming shortly as well. In June, City Council, as you remember, you approved a comprehensive plan amendment, which amends the population households forecast for the 2040 comprehensive plan, which will inform our numbers as we move forward on the 2050 comprehensive plan. And then also for the 180 acres, you did authorize the engineering to design the sanitary sewer under the railroad tracks. Actually, it says survey work has been completed, geotechnical work scheduled for late summer 2026. That's scheduled for the beginning of August, so coming up in just a couple weeks. And then design will be scheduled to be worked on in the fall. And we've had continuous conversations about our stormwater utility. And so that was just presented in the beginning of July. And so we have taken direction from you all, and we will be looking at the appeals section and improving that, as well as putting a placeholder in the budget. And we, for future discussion, if you want to keep it in the budget, to continue to look at the methodology for next year or not. We've been able to accomplish so much with our communications coordinator, so we have just some updates on some of the bigger items with that. You all approved our renewed contract with Polko, which is, we're using as a community engagement tool, and residents will be able to participate in surveys coming up on a lot of our community development projects. We also did our first comprehensive city annual report in April, which all department heads were able to present to you. And then something kind of unique is that we have the public art display policy and program that was adopted in May, and we did have the Walker art system installed upstairs. So we are currently accepting applications for folks that want to display their art. And then we have our city celebration that's coming up September 12th. And we also completed our second annual city staff employee survey, which has been a great tool, and proud to present those results to the entire organization and the council, just showing that we've adopted a culture of continuous improvement, and overall our staff are very happy. And then some added staff, public works operator position, and then we added the 3 full-time captain positions last month. And then we are awaiting our grant application that we did submit to MPCA for the review of feasibility about connecting Cimarron Park to water. So that will be coming for your approval whenever we receive that. And that is the updates for the second quarter, if you have any questions.
Any questions from council? Thank you for the update.
Just thank you for doing all that.
It's great being transparent at these meetings, and people can look at the minutes and know that we're hard at work for the city. All right, council reports. Councilmember Dragisich.
No report.
Councilmember Holtz.
Zilch.
I will say that been in contact with somebody for the Street dance on tents, change things up a little bit this year, move the band closer to the street. We'll have a tent in the street and one in the gravel area for people, so that it will be really a street dance and not a parking lot dance. So, that's what I have.
Very good. For the celebration, for the inflatables, we're looking at potentially 3 different inflatables this year instead of 2. But then I guess kind of my big ask is trying to get more volunteers to help staff those. We're thinking probably 6 would probably be the right number. And I was talking to Nicole about this, and I'm just trying to figure out how to best go about that. Obviously, if we can get volunteers, it would be best. I'm obviously gonna be volunteering for it. I'm gonna see if I can find some others, but I'm just gonna open it up. If anybody else knows any volunteers that might be willing, if you could pass on their contact info to me, so I can try to get the volunteers set up for that.
What's the minimum age you're thinking? Adults only?
Probably 16 over, yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, at least
16 and
16.
Because National Honor Society at the high school, they need to do volunteer hours.
I think 16 would be fine.
And part of the duties is making sure the parents are signing the waivers and we are applying wristbands to the kids, and then obviously, probably most important, making sure people stay safe.
Yeah, so it'd be 1 for the bouncy house, 2 for the obstacle course, 2 for the slide, and then, well, I said 6, so probably actually 7, because we'd want 2 people, 1 checking in, 1 applying the wristbands if possible. That'd be great. You know, if we can't get 7, fine. But, so my ask is just if anyone knows anybody that'd be willing to volunteer, if you could share that information with me. That's all.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Cragnis?
No report?
Staff reports.
No report.
No report.
You didn't even want to talk in front of us, so why would you have a report? Mr. Stofa?
Wow.
Mr. First?
No report.
No, thank you.
I can share with you, with the high temps last week, staff issued 60 irrigation violation notices, 15 with fines, and we did experience a low level at our ideal tower, 14 feet from water usage. Our other 2 towers, Lake Elmo Avenue North, 94, and the Inwood towers sustained their levels, their operating levels as need be, but the Ideal Avenue tower did go to low level last week.
Was that in part due to not having the secondary pump?
No, that's up and running. That's been running
Oh,
probably
okay.
for
All right,
3-4 weeks now. It's just the usage
it was
irrigation.
really high.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
I just wanted to share with you guys.
Okay, Mr. Stanley?
No report.
Council?
I think you've heard enough from me lately, so no report.
All right, with that, we'll adjourn this evening's meeting at 9:58. Thank you and have a good night.